All right, welcome cross-country fans. We're reporting live from the NEPSTA Division I Cross-Country Championships. On the mic right now is Sam Samara. Joined alongside me is Michelle Repass.
Hello,
Michelle?
everyone. Welcome.
Awesome. So, Michelle, we've got a beautiful day here in Lakeville, Connecticut. It's a little bit windy, but the sun is shining. I'd say these are, quintessential November cross-country race conditions. What do you think?
It's true. I think it's going to be a really good day for the cross-country runners today. They'll have a little bit of wind on the course for sure, but it's a beautiful day to be running.
All right. Let's give a little overview of the race course, right? You can see on the screen right now, we're sort of panning over the start line. Runners are going to start and run out towards the left of the screen, towards the observatory. They'll loop around campus, head downhill for a backstretch, make a turn back onto the golf course. That'll be about the mile mark, and then I think that's where the difficulties start to begin. It starts to pitch a little bit uphill. They'll head down on a road next to the lake, and then, Michelle, what part of the course are they going to hit?
They're going to have the hill that we lovingly call Cardiac, the steepest hill on the course. It will come back up above the lake here. The second half of this course is definitely the most challenging part of the course. They have a couple of hills to climb before finishing in exactly the same spot where they started. So they'll have plenty of challenge out there on the course today. But yeah, it'll be a good race to watch, I think. We also have the benefit here of having a really spectator-friendly course for all of the fans that are here in person, ready to watch. They'll be able to see the runners come through multiple times. And we, of course, will have drone coverage following the runners across the course, as well as cameras at the start and finish. So we'll have a lot of good views of the race today.
Yeah, so whether you're here in person with us or you're watching at home, you're going to get some great shots and some great views of this race. Let's talk a little bit about, for either first-time viewers, it looks like we've got our graphic on the board talking about the boys varsity race coming up. These are some of the results from the Founders League Championship. Alex Fisher, Loomis Chafee's top runner. He finished in a time of 15:54, right? He is definitely going to be one of the favorites to perhaps even win the individual race title today. And you can also see Jack Molshauser, Joseph Hurd coming in third and fourth that day at Loomis. Loomis, they are definitely one of the teams to look out for today, I think, on the boys' side.
Yeah, the fact that they have so many people finishing in the top there at the Founders Championship is a really big deal. It's also worth noting that the top runner there is right on our course record for today at 15:54 from the last race, so that'll be important to watch as well.
Yep, and then the ISL Boys Championship, we have William Trouts of Belmont Hill. I was looking this up before. He is only a sophomore, but already running in those mid-15s. Don't believe Roxbury Latin is here, but I think William Trouts, another one of those athletes to look out for in the boys' race to perhaps even take the individual title.
It's exciting to see here where we have multiple leagues coming together in New England. Some of these runners have been racing each other and seeing each other throughout the season multiple times, but it's exciting to see some new competition across runners who maybe are meeting each other for the first time this year.
Yes, it's going to be exciting for sure. Some of these teams have raced each other, others have not. This will be their first time seeing each other. Let's do a little talking about while we can see the runners, they're doing their strides, they're starting to get warmed up, they're starting to make their way to the line. Let's talk a little bit about how a cross-country meet is scored. To start, the course is 5 kilometers, 3.1 miles. Each varsity team is allowed to field 7 runners. The first top 5 on each team count towards scoring, and the score is just the addition of all of their places. So 6th and 7th do not score, but they are allowed to displace. So they can sort of add to other teams' scores by getting in front of other people's runners. Given that that's the way a meet works, Michelle, if you're looking to win the team title, what is important for a cross-country team?
We were talking a little bit before we went onto this broadcast about how important it is for runners to kind of look around them, to identify the packs that they're running in, and to have a sense of who they're going to be competitive with. Coaches help with this, of course. This is one of the other benefits of how spectator-friendly our course is. You'll see coaches running all over the place to meet their runners at particular spots, especially to highlight where they have some of those close races, because every one of those runners counts. Every one of those runners can help, whether they're scoring points in the top 5 or displacing other runners who might be in close competition for the final team score.
Yeah, so just giving us a little bit of a preview on the boys' side, it is going to be an incredibly close race when it comes to the team title and the team scoring. The way I have it right now, Phillips Andover, if we just take runners' PRs, their personal bests across the season, they lead Numas Chafee by 1 point, 94 to 95, with I think the real difference being some of their 3rd, 4th, and 5th runners, right? I think this race is going to be decided on how they run today. I don't think it's necessarily going to come down to their top guys. It's really going to come down to those runners in the middle. We've got also, looking in 3rd place, Phillips Exeter Academy. I have scored at 103. Again, only looking at PRs for the rest of the season. And then Brunswick and St. Paul's are tied at 4th at 124 points. But I think Brunswick is one of the teams to look out for, maybe to even sneak into that top 3. They've got 2 runners in the low 15s based on PRs. Nathan Lee coming into this race with the fastest time this year of 15:02. Their weakness, though, are those 3rd, 4th, and 5th runners. So if they can have a really good day out there today, I think Brunswick could even sneak into the top 3.
Sam, you can see they're getting ready to start. We should be starting here with the boys varsity race at about 1:15.
Yep.
The boys are looking to try to stay warm as they're getting ready to race in the face of these winds in the open field above the lake. We know walking around this campus we're in a little bit of a wind tunnel here, so hopefully once they get going, I think they'll warm up pretty quickly. Just a quick overview of the races. The boys varsity race will be starting in just a couple of minutes here at 1:15. We have the girls varsity race starting at 2, boys JV at 2:40, and girls JV at 3:25. So that's just a brief overview of all of the races that we'll see coming up today.
All right, looks like they're getting ready here. Race is scheduled to go off in about 2 minutes. Michelle, I'm excited.
I'm excited too. I feel nervous as if I'm running. So
I know it's taking me back to my high school and my college running days as well. As we're waiting for this race to get underway, one more storyline. The boys' course record, 15:54. We've got a ton of boys in this race who have run well below that this year. So, again, it's a hilly course. It's a tough course. I think that record could go down today. But here we go. They're on the line.
It's a great view of everybody lined up, ready to start in this. And here they go.
And there we go. Okay, they're starting off. One of the things about this course is the first term heads left. So you're going to want to start to get to the left-hand side of that white line. And what are we seeing here? Okay, runners are going into place. The packs are forming.
It's a good view of, it's not quite a bottleneck, right? But the fact that they are turning, as you mentioned, it becomes really important to get along that left line. And we can see they're about to curve right around the observatory, and then they'll kind of loop back in the direction they started from.
All right. From this drone shot, we can't see individual runners right now, but I think one thing that often happens in these cross-country races is someone gets excited and they shoot to the front. So we're really going to have to wait a little bit to see how this race develops. But already it looks like it's a quick race. It's really strung out here.
Important to note the opening of this course. We do have, as we mentioned, we have a bit of a hilly course. This first half mile or so is flat going into a downhill. And so it's a pretty fast start because of that. It'll be really exciting to see how runners pace themselves and deal with the fact that their 2 big climbs, really back-to-back, are in the last mile or so of the race, mile and a half of the race. And so their pacing is really crucial here at the start.
All right. Looks like in the front, I think that might be Alex Fisher of Loomis running alongside Tam Gavanis of Andover. not seeing the Brunswick runners quite yet, but maybe we'll see them a little more clearly once we get a closer shot. But it looks like Alex Fisher and Tam are really going for it. Maybe they want that course record, certainly want that individual title.
We're getting some good views here of the run that goes through and by the golf course as well. Much of this course is really on grass. So they're about to cross over the main entrance here. They have a very little bit on road, but we'll see that much of it is on grass. The conditions of the ground are really good for running today.
I know, Michelle, I saw you running the course this morning. Give us a little bit of a preview of course conditions and just, what are the conditions on the ground?
I did run the course this morning. It was the first time I had done it in a long time, actually, and I wanted to go through so I could get a little preview of what the runners would be dealing with today. I was running it much slower than they are, but it was great. I mean, unfortunately, we've had quite a bit of a drought, but it makes the ground they're not dealing with mud or anything like that. And so it's looking great out there. They're just starting as they go by the volleyball courts here, their descent down the hill. That's really significant in this race.
Yeah, a super significant hill in this race because as runners pass the 2-mile mark, they will have to come back up this hill. And it's really hard to see it on screen, but they're actually trending, quite steeply downhill right now and on the way back. When I coach cross country here at Hotchkiss, we used to always say, take them on Tories, because this is what we call Tories Hill. And this, I think, is where some real moves can be made in that last mile or so of the race.
Absolutely. I always think about, too, how much the runners are thinking on this downhill about the fact that they're going to climb it up again at the end. So I think it's a balance, right, between, on the one hand, they're pacing themselves. They know what the course looks like and that they're going to be climbing at the end of it, but also kind of trying to let that be in the latter half of the race and just open up and do their thing on a strong start here.
All right, so it looks like we've got Tam Gavanis in the lead here, presumably Alex Fisher behind. And yeah, if you look at the front of this race, I mean, the pace is going to be fast. They're really opening this up.
They're coming down this hill now, and as they start to turn this corner at the bottom of this hill, one of the helpful things about this course, certainly, the runners will see very clearly the 1 mile and 2 mile markers, and we'll be able to point those out to you as well as they come through them. So they're about to turn left to come back through by the lake and actually come pretty close to the start of the start and finish of the race again.
I was going to say, they are not that far off from the 1 mile mark. I think these lead guys, they're going to be coming in well under 5 minutes. They are setting a blistering pace. Yes, and now that we can see, yes, this is definitely in the blue. Tam Gavanis of Andover and Alex Fisher of Loomis with the white and red and the white arm sleeves. You can see in the back behind them, Nathan Lee in the yellow of Brunswick trying to close that gap. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting race. Really, really fast out here from the start. You can see as they're passing that clock, and you can maybe see it, they've come through the mile mark. I mean, these guys have come through the mile in around 4 minutes and 40 seconds. That is incredibly fast.
So we get a good view here pairing with the overview from the drone. They're coming right through and they'll be passing. You'll be able to see the chute on their right. That will be the finish that they pass through a couple of times before they can actually get there at the end.
Yeah, they're looking. Yeah, and these two runners, I think it's at this point it's their race to lose. They're looking smooth. Nathan Lee right there in the yellow.
I think it should make for a great race too, the fact that we have these packs, even just with a couple at the front of the pack running together, pushing each other. That'll be really helpful for their final times on this tough course.
Totally, 100%.
And now we can see the rest of the pack, the crowds coming through here. This is the bulk of the race right here with all of these runners.
Yeah, and when it comes to the team score, this is where the race gets decided. You can see how tightly packed all these teams are, and the mantra in cross country is every place counts, right? A matter of seconds can mean 10, 15, sometimes even 20 points in a densely packed race like this. So again, when we're looking at the team score here, I don't think it's going to be decided by those guys in the front. It's going to be decided by these guys right here in the middle of the pack. These 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th and 7th runners as well.
It makes for a great combination of a team sport for what sometimes I think people think of as more of an individual race, that there really is this important team component to it.
Yes, right. We can see, athletes and fans cheering on each other, right? Again, we've got this great shot of Alex and Tam still side by side, trending downhill. They're going to have a section of road to run on in a second, and then the hills are going to start. And I'm going to be really interested to see who can keep their composure and who's going to make the moves in that part of the course.
They're on this downhill now. That's one of the most significant, along with Torrey's, one of the most significant downhill stretches where they really can just kind of lean and go and open up, especially at this point in the race as they prepare to climb up Cardiac, as you mentioned.
Yeah, so we've got Nathan Lee in the yellow there alone. We've got Teddy Hojlo in front of, let's see, it looks like Arashi Hunter of Andover. So yeah, we'll have to see who wins out amongst them. But yep, you can see they're heading downhill now on this section of road. Past what is actually our head of school's house over there on the right under our NEPSTA logo there. Exciting stuff, exciting stuff.
This is one of the few stretches on road that really happens throughout this course. They can opt to run on the road on Torrey's Hill. There are cones set up. I actually saw, shout out to Hotchkiss Security, setting up cones along Route 141 there to make sure everybody stays safe. But here we go with the start of Cardiac Hill, which is quite steep, despite the fact that you can't quite tell from this view.
That's true. It's hard to tell from the drone footage, but this is a steep hill, and it looks like things are holding. Tam Gavena is holding off Alex Fisher.
They really are driving up that hill, too. I mean, that's one of the things that makes it hard to see how steep it is that they both still look quite strong. But this hill, along with Torrey's, is often one that's going to separate people out quite a bit.
Definitely. And I think, you charge up the hill. You can maybe make a move. You can maybe pass some people. But the tough part about this course is you crest it, just like we see the runners doing right now, and then it doesn't let up. It looks like it looks like it's flat, but it's a bit of a false flat. It's still up here. And this is that part that athletes on the Hotchkiss team in particular like to call cardiac arrest, this period after Cardiac Hill, where now it continues to trend a little bit uphill. Looks like Tam Gavanis taking the lead, starting to increase that gap on Alex Fisher.
Certainly people who run this course a lot have experience with these hills in combination, but I think, all runners are training not just with hills in isolation, but the way that these hills are kind of strung together and put together is so important. There's a very brief flattening out when runners pass the 2-mile marker, which our lead runners are just about to do. But it's pretty quickly return to Torrey's Hill in that tough climb. Okay, we've got Tam. He's passing the 2-mile mark right now at 9:32. Michelle, I've got to say, Tam has got course record on the mind. He's also really opened up the rest of the race, too. There's quite a bit of space now between our top 2 runners. Again, those hills tend to open things up a little bit. Yeah, I think it's tough to see. We've got Alex Fisher. He's still got him in his sights. Same thing, but again, at this point, I think Tam is our favorite here in the race. And here we've got a good, strong contingent coming up. The wind's picking up, too. It sure is. Which, actually, the way the wind is blowing today, it's coming sort of up and off the lake, so that actually might be helping runners a little bit get up these hills as they've got this pretty strong tailwind. Hope they feel a little push from behind as they're making their way up these hills. Speaking of the hills, too, I think it's important to note for these runners who have run on so many different courses, they're really thinking about racing each other on this particular course as much as trying to compare different course times. So many of the courses they've been running on are so different in terms of their terrain. Obviously, weather is a different variable. So the practice of racing each other on any particular course is really helpful and important for them. But the fact that the course record is really threatened today is an exciting thing for today's running, for sure. Super duper exciting. And Michelle and I were here on beautiful Elver's patio. We're overlooking the finish line and the 2-mile mark. And Michelle, it is loud out here. We've got parents, we've got students, we've got fans. They're all cheering each other on. It's just super great to see. It is great to see. I think most of the fans we've seen move down closer to the lake to really line the course, and they can move not very much at all and see so many, 4 different sections of the course, really, 4 different parts of the race. So it's a great, it's a really supportive vibe, I think, in cross country always, but especially on this course, it's really easy to cheer on family, teammates, etc.
Here we go. We've got, a shot here. More athletes making their way off of that hill, cardiac hill, into that long stretch up to the 2-mile mark. You saw the previous shot. Tam Gavanis continuing to work his way up Torrey's Hill.
We'll see when we come to that, the top of Torrey's Hill too. Once we crest that hill, there is a really fast, flat section at the end of the course. So again, it's repeating the first mile of the course, and so once they get off of Torrey's Hill, they'll have a good, fast finish here.
Okay, all right. We've got some drone footage here. Looks like Tam Gavanis starting to make his way. I can tell you that light post right there, that's about 800 meters to go. And from this point, it starts to trend downhill once again. I think he's off and away. I don't see a scenario in which Alex Fisher is able to catch him.
He looks really in control, certainly. And
Yeah.
I think once you can kind of crest through Torrey's with that degree of control, it'll make for an exciting finish.
Yeah, super exciting finish. And again, even though it may seem right now that the individual title is decided, again, we've got our eyes on that course record of 15:54. And we're also going to be looking at the team titles too, really trying to figure out, whose 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th runners are getting in front of whose 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th runners. Looks like that might be Taft right there.
This is going to be a good shot of the finish here with our drone view.
Yeah.
Really kind of getting close here to the observatory and that loop that they're going to kind of wrap back around, repeating the start, and we'll see them coming across the finish pretty soon.
Yeah, one thing I'll say about the finish is, once you make that turn around the observatory, you've got sort of I'd say about 150-meter stretch until the actual finish line. I think lots of athletes are tempted to start their kick, right, their little sprint at the end of the race, right as they round that observatory. But if you do that, you end up kicking right into this sort of funky off-camber uphill section. I think smart runners who really know this course and really trust their kick will start that kick a little bit later. So it'll be more interesting to see as we start to see some of the meat of the pack coming through. Will people kick early? Will people kick late? How will the sort of terrain of this finish sort of affect things as they're coming down to the line?
Sam, we both coached cross country for a bunch of years, and certainly coaching and practicing on this course, we've done this final finish a bunch of times.
Oh, yes.
And so runners really practice the breakdown of this final sprinting.
All right, so we are rounding, 14:29, 14:30.
Yes.
Michelle, I think it is almost safe to say at this point that the course record has not just gone down, but has been, almost obliterated. This is quite incredible. You can see this last stretch here, running past some trees. Again, this is a funky finish. It's a little off camber. It's a little bit up and down.
He looks like he's got control of it, though, certainly. You can see
totally.
the fans there cheering him on, getting ready to cross this finish and come through the chute. We're at 14:58.
Here we
59.
go. 15 flat. That is our individual winner, Tam Gavanis of Andover.
Breaking the course record by nearly a minute. The previous course record was, again, 15:54. That's an exciting run.
Incredible. And it looks like we've got coming behind in 2nd place, Alex Fisher of Loomis, 15:18. Again, once again, under that course record.
By quite a bit.
Amazing time.
It's exciting to see multiple people breaking the course record.
Here we go. Nathan Lee of Brunswick now crosses around 15:30. And it looks like, here we go, in 4th, Teddy Hojlo of Brunswick. Michelle, you're not going to believe this, only an 8th grader.
Is that true?
That's true, only
Wow.
an 8th grader.
Wow. We'll be seeing a lot of him for a while.
That we will. Okay, and then we've got Arashi Hunter, it looks like, or I'm going to assume of Andover, coming in 5th. All right, I think
It's
this
worth
is
noting that we just passed the old course record also. So not just one, but several runners coming inside that old course record.
all right. We're seeing athletes starting to stream in now. I think, again, this is where things really start to matter in terms of the team scoring. Looks like we've got Leave an Exeter runner coming through here.
This is something that's exciting about cross country, I think, for the athletes. They don't know everything that's happening above and behind them on the course, but they know the people who are right around them, and they know the races that are in front of them, and they're responding well to those competitive finishes.
There we go. And again, this is where races on the team side can be lost in one. These tight packs, these really close finishes, you know, who's passing who. He's got a, looks like a Taft runner there, a couple Loomis runners coming through, sandwiching that Deerfield runner.
In addition to these finishers, this is a great view of all of the fans who are essentially lining the finish, creating a chute before the chute. I'm sure Nate Seidenberg is at the finish, making sure everyone's in place and creating that lane.
Trusty Hotchkiss boys assistant cross-country coach and head track and field coach. Let's see, we've got Deerfield runner coming through the line, a Loomis runner edging out an NMH runner here.
I love to see these close, fast, competitive finishes all the way through. They're really kind of fighting for their place wherever they are.
Yeah, and I think that has really been the tone of the race today. Fast, right? It has been all about the speedy times and the sprint finishes. Here we go. And again, you can see some runners getting edged out. Oh, just right there at the line.
Hopefully, even with a tough course, those close finishes are helping runners to get best times or best times on this course, and that's really important for that individual component in addition to the team scoring that you've mentioned.
Totally, 100%. Yep. See them getting into the chute here.
The chute is a complicated system there, isn't it? To make sure everybody stays in line and keeps the line moving when these runners are tired and laid out a bit.
Oh gosh, I tell you, when working the Founders League Championship, which was hosted here last year, I was working the chute, and boy, when the first runners come through, totally fine. When you get these close finishes here, you're trying to keep people in order. You're trying to keep them moving through the chute. I mean, I just feel so bad for the athletes sometimes. They just ran their heart out for 3.1 miles, and we're saying,
keep moving.
Yeah, power walk about another 100 yards. See a good picture. Oh, we got a great shot of Tam and his coach right there. Again, runners continuing to stream in. Another thing I'm noticing as this race is panning out here, there's been some close finishes and some close clumps of runners, but for the most part, this race was very strung out. Big gaps in between those groups. And I think that's just a testament to that really fast pace that was set in that first mile at the beginning of this race.
It highlights how important it is to kind of find your pocket too when you're running. You don't want to be alone in between groups. You really want to kind of clump up and run with a pack, even just for your psychological benefit, I think.
Yeah, I know. I want, when I coach cross country, when I coach track, I'm always telling athletes, don't end up in no man's land. You want to be running with someone. You want to have, at least contact with some other runner or group of runners to either push you along, right, or to just know sort of where you stand, have some people to pass when it comes to the finish.
We have a good shot of the clock here just to see that continuing to run through. Runners are, as they finish, seeing their times on this course as we're approaching the 20-minute mark.
Most certainly, right? Most certainly. I got to tell you, Michelle, when I was looking at the pre-meet, I was really expecting this to be a very close race between Tam, Alex Fisher, and Nathan Lee. I thought it was really going to come down to, those three running together, and then it was going to be a matter of who makes that move in that last 800 meters after Torrey's Hill. But, Tam, he took it from the gun, and he has reaped the rewards. Great overview shot of our start and finish line area here. And again, look at all those fans here gathered to watch the great sport of running. Incredible. And another shout out again to our wonderful grounds crew here at Hotchkiss. You can see, they've set up this wonderful chute, all these tents, painting the course. That white line you might have seen from the drone footage, also done and freshly painted by our grounds crew. So huge shout out to them as well.
It's really helpful for how well marked it is, actually. It's a pretty clear course, but wherever there are turns, there are spots where the path splits or rejoins, and the fact that it's as clearly marked as it is, I think makes it really helpful for them. They also, even since I was out running the course this morning, were taking care of leaves that were still kind of stuck out there. They've been cleaning that up quite a bit.
Give a little wave to the drone right here. You can see Michelle and myself here in the booth commentating, bringing you this live footage. You can see our papers flapping around on this windy day.
Yeah, that'll give a better sense of how windy it is out here for the runners than maybe you can tell just from watching the race itself.
It is pretty windy indeed. I'm just looking out over the scene here. We've got, lots of parents congratulating their athletes. We've got people still making their way through the chute. I'd say for the most part, I'd have to guess that most runners have probably made their way. It looks like we've got still a few more finishing up.
Kind of shows you the spirit of cross country. We might be biased and partial here, but
sure.
the support, there's a good shot of the Andover team, I think camaraderie and teamwork that we see in any sport is really on display here, certainly.
Yeah, I'm always very, at this point, I'm not surprised or astonished, but it always warms my heart, whether it's at a cross-country meet or a track meet. You never really see bad blood between these athletes. I remember playing other sports growing up where, the idea was the other team is the enemy, but all the time at these cross-country, these track and field races, as soon as the race is over, you see athletes, they're congratulating each other, they're shaking hands, hugging each other. They all know each other pretty well from racing each other over the course of the season. The vibes, as it were, are just very good here at the finish line. Really positive spirit, everyone just celebrating their successes and their efforts on the day.
And maybe happy to be done with those hills also. That might have something to do with it as well.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and I think that's part of it too, is, everyone finishes the race and you've all done this very difficult thing together. And,
right.
And that's part of what builds that camaraderie and why we see people gathered in this fashion at the finish line. I'll be really curious to see when we have them, how those team results shook out. I think something really important for Brunswick was that Teddy Hojlo, second runner for Brunswick, was able to get in front of that second runner for Andover, Arashi Hunter. Now, of course, that's going to really amount to, one less point in the team score. The real question is, how did Brunswick's third, fourth, and fifth runners fare out there on the course? Were they able to have a good enough day to get in front of some of those Loomis, some of those Andover, and some of those Exeter athletes?
You've talked about the importance of the depth of each team.
Totally.
And I think once we kind of need to see the results to see how all of those places compare with each other. But it is just a testament to how important every runner is on the team for those final scores.
100%. This is definitely not a sport where you can just have one fast runner and hope to win team titles. It really takes a team effort here. Another beautiful shot of Lake Winonscompoment, deepest natural lake in Connecticut. I mean, I suppose there might be deeper unnatural lakes, whatever that means. But
we take a lot of pride in the fact that that's our deepest natural lake in Connecticut.
We do take a lot of pride. We also take a lot of pride. Another factoid that I always hear is that the state record lake trout was caught in this lake, I think, sometime back in the 40s or.
Is that
50s.
true?
I've
never heard that.
It's what I've heard. Don't ask me how long it was or how much it weighed, but somewhere in there was at one point a state record lake trout.
There's a lot of mythology about that lake.
A lot of mythology.
The plane that's at the bottom of it, which is true, but
which is true.
A lot of good stories about that lake.
There is a plane that had to crash land at the bottom there. So, anyone who scubas out there, take a trip to Lake Winonscompoment. Who knows what you'll find. All right. It looks like we are sort of concluding here the boys' race. Again, we'll be eagerly awaiting those team scores to see who's going to be taking the team titles and who's going to be on that podium as a team.
We have some good space here, too, between each race. We're still about 20 minutes out from the next race, which will be the girls' varsity race at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, and I think as we get closer to that race, we'll give a little bit more of a preview of what things look like on the girls' side, both in terms of individual runners, who might win the race and take that individual title, as well as team projections. But I can give you a little sneak peek now. It's another close one. If you score the girls' varsity race just on PRs, we're talking about margins of 1, 2, maybe 4 points separating teams there at the top. So it'll be interesting.
One of the things that we'll look at the end of the season here, in addition to, you know, however their skills all season long translate to this course, it's also translating to the end of the season, how they've been resting up for this race in particular, and hopefully all of that training and resting lands well on this tough course at the end of the season.
Totally. You mentioned training and resting, and Michelle, we have coached cross country here at the Hotchkiss School and other places as well, I think, right?
Yes, indeed.
Where else have you coached?
I coached cross country at Cheshire Academy for
That's
5
right.
years before I came here.
Awesome. And you're also our head women's, or I guess we should say girls, swim coach, right?
Yes.
So another endurance sport, just
Yes.
in the water, not on land.
Yes.
And you mentioned training and resting, and so maybe what we should talk about are tapers, right?
Sure,
What does it
yeah.
mean when an athlete tapers for a big race?
Yeah, especially thinking about how hard they're working in their training all season long, both in how fast and hard they're running, but also miles covered throughout the season and throughout the week. As they approach the end of the season, where they're looking to swim. It's true in swimming too. It's the same idea. As they're looking to run their fastest times, they'll start to rest their bodies a little bit more. So they'll be coming down in that overall mileage, trying to ease off what they've been where they've been breaking down their bodies a bit through the season, and do a bit more race simulation, short, fast things to prepare for the race at the end of the season.
Totally, and a lot of these teams also had their league meets the previous weekend. So, I remember being a coach at Hotchkiss. It was always this sort of tricky game of, well, we want to taper and we want to make sure we sort of take off some of that volume and training load in anticipation of the Founders League title, right? But we don't want to do it too much that our athletes still aren't sharp at New England. So for some of these teams, it can be a tricky balance of, how are you going to time your taper and how are you going to make sure that your athletes are not just physically, but mentally going into that last meet of the season ready to go.
Did you enjoy tapering when you were running?
Did I enjoy tapering?
Yeah.
I enjoyed tapering. Well, it's interesting. I think it's always nice when you get a little bit of an off week and
Sure.
you do a little bit less running. And, one of the things that happens in a taper is that because you're giving yourself a little bit more rest and you're running a little bit less miles, every run and every workout you do, you just feel a little bit more fresh, a little bit more springy, a little bit more fast. But for me, I always got pretty bad pre-race nerves, and so I think the advent of a taper always meant that, something really important was about to happen. So physically, feeling great throughout the week. Mentally, it was always this game of having to, keep myself calm and make sure, get my head screwed on straight.
It becomes a real mental game at the end of the season for sure. We always talk about how it's like, 90% physical, 10% mental throughout the season, and then it just completely flips at the end of the season, and you have to really trust your training and trust your body to hold up to, especially if you're taking it out fast and making some bold moves at the start of the race like we just saw.
I know, totally. As you get to the end of the season, I'd always tell my athletes, I'd say, hey, the hay is in the barn. You've done the work. You've ran the miles. You've done the workouts. The fitness is there. All you need to do is show up and execute on race day. And a lot of that is mental, right? That's where the mental component comes in. Can you trust your training and execute and do what you need to do on race day? We certainly saw that in the boys' race today. People trusting their training, executing, getting it done. Tons of runners coming in under our course record. Hopefully lots of runners having personal bests as well, like you said, either for the season, for their careers, or at least on this course. Awesome. Folks tuning in, it is 1:44 right now, so we're almost 15 minutes out from the girls' varsity race. Again, schedule of events, we've got the girls' varsity race will begin at 2 o'clock. Then the boys' junior varsity race at 2:40 p.m., followed by the girls' junior varsity race at 3:25. I know we're a ways off, but I think the boys and the girls' JV race, an interesting thing here is in the varsity race, teams can only field 7 runners, but I believe in the junior varsity races you can take up to 15. Same rules apply in terms of scoring. Your top 5 score, top 7 can displace, and then I think everyone after 7 actually won't count towards team results, but certainly, they will still appear in the results and still have chances to run fast times for themselves.
I think that's where we see that that teamwork and support show up too. One of the cool things that I love about this is that the 7 runners who are in the varsity race not able to cheer on their teammates in that race, but they're the boys who just ran in that race are done now, and they're ready to cheer on their teammates in the girls races and in the JV races as well. So I think we'll probably see some of those athletes out there in the fan groups cheering on their teammates.
100%. The varsity races, those are exciting, right? That's where the fast times are. Those are the fastest runners on each team. But the JV races, this is where you can really get a sense of a team's depth and who they're going to have next year as teams potentially graduate, seniors, and they go off to college and off to greater things. So
it's a great point. It becomes a little bit of a feeder program, right? Mm-hmm. Where you have you might have some really strong seniors in the JV races also, but that those who are in the younger grades are often looking to move up, always looking to improve their times in ways that might land them in that varsity race as well.
Yeah, so it'll be great. I think when we get to the JV race, we'll really be getting a good look at some of the future of these teams, right? Loomis Chaffee, for example, they're always a deep team, both on the cross country and the track side, doing a great job of developing those young athletes. Exeter, again on the boys' side, has dominated the JV race for the past, I'd say, better part of a decade. And again, it'll just be exciting to see, as on the girls' side as well, what do the future of these teams look like as they graduate some of their more talented athletes?
When we think about depth, too, it's worth noting that this is the Division I championship meet, that these schools are in Division I based on school size. We saw some schools listed on some of those league results from last weekend, some of them not here because they're in different divisions. So we have some bigger schools, bigger teams on the roster today.
Totally. And I think it's always, it's really impressive. You look at a school like Phillips Exeter and Phillips Andover that has a student body of, around or maybe even a little over 1,000 students. And you can think, okay, right, you just do the math. They're going to have more available athletes than, say a school, even like Hotchkiss, the host school today, which is around 600 kids. And so it's super impressive to see a school like Brunswick, right, all-boys school, smaller school, really making some waves here in the Division I race, at least on the boys' side.
We're starting to see some girls line up on the start of the race. They're doing their dynamic stretching, their warm-ups. Again, trying to get ready for the race, keeping lots of layers on so they can stay warm, not just for their own comfort, but that'll be important for the race. That's one of the big challenges, I think, when you have some time. We had inside a bunch of runners who are kind of camped out just inside to try to stay warm while they're waiting to race, and keeping layers on for as long as possible. Again, not terribly cold for November, but cold enough that they need to pay attention to it.
Yeah, I think as athletes are running, once they're in the race, it's not going to feel too cold. I think what's tricky, especially here, just given where our start line is, it is a super exposed part of the golf course. You're getting all that wind coming off the lake. And so I think one of the challenges is just, you might do your dynamic stretches, do some jogging around, your A skips, your B skips, all that, and get warm. But if you stand around for too long and you don't have layers on, the wind's going to just sap that warmth.
I like, too, that this is part of their warm-up routine that they do at the start of every race, really at the start of every practice, too. I think this is one of the things that can help calm the nerves that you were talking about. You have a routine that you go to all the time, and it kind of gets you ready, not just in your body, but in your mind also to race whatever is coming up next. So it's cool to see these routines.
Totally, 100%. So as we are looking at this girls' race here, again, they're huddled around the start line. Still got their warm-ups on. We see a couple athletes doing some strides. That's a great point about the pre-race warm-up routine. I think it's always a great moment to get yourself situated mentally, right? Maybe think about race strategy. It's always interesting to see, too, the different routines that different teams have. They're always usually going to take a similar form where you'll start with some running and some jogging and then maybe get into some stretches and dynamic movement and then some strides, which are some sort of short, sprintish type efforts, kind of usually from the start line out into kind of the start of the course. Again, just to get the legs turning over and moving. But one of the things I always thought was fun when I was coaching cross country is that different teams will do different things in their huddle. So usually teams will stride out, they'll get in a huddle, maybe the captain will say a few words, and they always have lots of fun different sort of cheers that they do, which I always thought is fun to note.
Final words of inspiration before they start.
Totally.
I have the list of girls teams here. In their box numbers. So they'll line up in this order once they're all ready to go. We have St. Paul's, Choate, Milton, Exeter, Loomis, Miss Porter's, Deerfield, Hotchkiss, Taft, Windsor, NMH, Andover, Greenwich, and Nobles.
Yeah.
So this will be the, I think, random drawing of box numbers and assignments, but they will line up on the start line in that order.
Totally, right? And, I think when people are planning out race courses, I think there's a lot that goes into making sure that no matter what box number you get, you're not at any sort of disadvantage here. And I know one of the things we've done on our course is we sort of slant the start line so that it's somewhat, I guess you'd almost say perpendicular to, the direction one would run towards that observatory at the start. So whether you're Deerfield and you're in box 1, or I'm sorry, on the girls' side, whether you're St. Paul's and you're in box 1, or you're in box 14, Nobles and Greenough, you've got just as much of an opportunity to get to that first left-hand turn.
It's a similar kind of staggered start in track, right? It's certainly
Yes.
subtle here on this start line in cross country, but it creates a similar effect. And luckily, I think they have enough space in that straightaway before they start to curve around the observatory that it doesn't create too much of a bottleneck. We saw that in the boys' race. Clean start. Everything went off without any stumbles or anything like that. So we'll hope for the same in the girls' start here.
All right. Again, we've got this great shot of the start line. Athletes getting in their strides. I'm already seeing a few of them put their spikes on, but are, again, because it's windy out here, they're leaving on their sweatpants and their jackets. Smart move, if you ask me.
I think they have to be accustomed to running in all kinds of weather, right?
Most certainly, yeah. Most certainly. I mean, it's been here in the Northeast a sort of unseasonably warm fall, but it's had its cold snaps. And certainly if these runners have been on the team for, if you're a senior, 4 years, or, even a couple of years, they will have encountered some wet, some rainy, some cold meets at some time in their career.
Maybe even some snow.
Maybe even some snow.
Less common in the past few years, but
Yes.
I've definitely been to cross-country meets when I've been coaching where they've been running through active snow. So I'm glad we don't have that here today.
Certainly, and if any of these athletes run track in the spring as well, right? Maybe they're distance runners running the 3K or the 1,500. The track season here in New England, it starts in April. And weather in New England in April can be a total coin toss. You could get a sunny 65-degree day, or it could be 40 degrees and rainy. So I think these athletes will be used to these conditions here in November, because they might be kind of similar to what they've seen in the track season in April.
This is why I don't coach track, Sam. As we say, it's always sunny and 85 in the pool area.
Always sunny and 85, right? 100%.
As we're looking to get ready for the start of the girls' race, we could talk a little bit about the course record for the girls, which is held by Sammy Glass from Hotchkiss. The time is 18:04. I think that Sammy is starting this race.
She is, yeah. So she will have the honor of firing the gun to get the race underway. Sammy Glass, I think, also being a Hotchkiss alum, like you just said.
Class of 2014, I believe.
Class of 2014, and I believe she went on to run at Yale.
She
perhaps?
did. Yep.
Yeah. You would know. Awesome. Looking a little bit at this girls' race, I prefaced it earlier, or I sort of said earlier that it's going to be another close one on the team side. Again, the way I have it, if you score it just based on PRs so far this season, Loomis Chafee looks like they're set to win at 78 points. But Andover Academy right behind them with 80 points. And then Phillips Exeter right behind them with 84 points. So, again, I think it's going to be a toss-up. Any one of these three teams could finish first, second, or third. And then you never know. St. Paul's, if you score it, again, just based off PR so far this season, comes in at fourth with 116 points. Noble and Greenhouse would be in fifth with 146. And then Windsor Academy with 152 points in sixth. So again, there could be some flip-flopping or some moving between Nobles and Greenhouse and Windsor. But again, you never know what can happen on race day.
I like the predictions of a meet simulation, though. I appreciate having the expectations set a little bit so we know what to look for. Another fun thing that can be cool to watch for is, in addition to, of course, all of these teams competing with each other, looking to do the best they can in individuals and team scores, we do have rivalries also that are kind of at play this weekend. Of course, we're here at Hotchkiss. A lot of Hotchkiss teams today are at Taft. Taft Cross Country is here. We have a lot of other pairs of schools that have their own little rivalries happening within the larger meet. So there are lots of layers of competition that should inspire people in their running today.
100%. You know, we got this shot right here of all the different teams' tents, so giving us a good sense of, again, perhaps some rivalries that are happening today. Thinking again at this girls' varsity race, looking at the pre-meet projections, Lily Lyons of Greenwich Academy, again, I think it's going to be her race to lose. She comes in with the fastest time so far this season at 17:59. Behind her is Charlotte Murphy of Taft at 18:32, and then Natalie Crocker of Loomis at 18:47. Unclear how this race will unfold. It might look very similar to the boys' race with Lily Lyons taking it out, knowing that she is the favorite in this race. Perhaps she'll try to keep it tactical. Who knows? It's going to be interesting to see. I really thought that in that boys' race there was going to be a pack of 5 or 6 boys battling with 800 meters to go, and that is not how it turned out. So again, you never know what can happen.
We're just a couple minutes away from the start of the girls' race. Great shot there of all of the teams lined up. They look very ready to go.
Super ready to go. Super ready to go. Boy, I tell you what, when I was a runner, this is when time feels like it slows down. It's incredible.
You can see that sloping line that you were talking about there too. The schools on the outside kind of curve up a little bit ahead. And so they'll have their fair shot at making the turn around the observatory.
Yeah, just like you said earlier, Michelle, like a staggered start or a fountain start on the track. Got our, it's like they're getting the commands. 2 commands start, to the line and then the gun. And there it is. They're off. Got some runners on the outside, on the far right, making their way in.
It's a fast sprint start. Again, there are a lot of people, I think, who are eager to get to the front of that pack so they don't get caught up or stuck at all. Yeah. Yeah,
you even see a few athletes kind of getting pinched off there around that flag, knowing that they have to keep it on their left.
You were talking a little bit, too, about spots on the ground that are maybe just a little bit uneven. It is a cross-country course, right? So that's kind of the ground that they're on right here at the start, and getting out fast and sprinting through that while also keeping an eye on their footing is important.
Totally, and you know, our ground, again, another shout out to our grounds crew. I was running the course the other day, and they've done a great job of sort of highlighting with paint, you know, any little divots or potholes, any roots that are sticking out of the ground. So
we can see too, here's actually a great shot of the lines that kind of merge and cross. So it's really clear. You can see those lines are numbered. They're going to come back through this spot on the course in the opposite direction at the end. And so every line is numbered. And you can see which way they're going to go when they come back through on the second and third time crossing that same spot.
Totally. All right, let's see what we've got here. I think that could be Lily Lyons of Greenwich Academy out there in the front in the sort of blackish green jersey.
The drone's trying to help you to get in front of them now, so
There
you
we
can
go.
read their so you can read
Yeah,
their
I know.
jerseys. That's great.
I know that's Charlotte Murphy of Taft right there, winner of the Founders League title this year. Or actually, no, that's not correct. I think she got second behind a runner from Kingswood, Oxford, who is not in Division One.
Correct.
But yes, it looks like, again, shaping up very similar to the boys' race. 2 runners taking it out, going to battle for that win.
It's opened up pretty early at the front anyway. You have maybe 2 and then 1 and then 2 runners. That pack, though, that's kind of following behind them, I think likely to stay pretty tight throughout the race, maybe until the hills, which, again, tend to open things up a little bit, separate people out.
And I think there's a couple things going on that might explain this. One, you know, a lot of these, we've got some really talented runners in this race, and they want to run fast times today. So I think the strategy has been, you know, let's take out the race fast. But sometimes strategy can be to take out the race slow, especially if you're a team who wants to control that race and knows that, hey, we don't have the raw running ability to just outpace people, but we've got fast kicks. And so if you can keep that race slow, or you can keep it tactical, you can keep the main pack of runners together, that might give your team the best shot at kicking past people at the line. But again, not so much the strategy today, as we've got runners just taking it out, trying to run fast races and see, again, keep it a true race, I think is what people like to call it.
This view shows the runners coming, kind of curving around the volleyball courts, the beach volleyball courts, and they are now really about to kind of drop down and run down Torrey's Hill, which we've seen before.
Yeah. And, you know, I think you can see it pretty well here with the drone footage. You saw it again in the boys' race. You know, this course is hilly, and it's run on a lot of grass, so I think that's part of what makes this a slower course. You know, athletes tend not to get their PRs on this course, of course, although we saw some pretty fast times
Sure.
In the boys' race. I think that's just a lot of that being explained by just how dry the course is right now and just how fast it's running with the relative lack of rain and some of the strong winds that we had last night.
Yeah, you've probably been to some meets where the ground is maybe wet enough, muddy enough that it actually, like, it completely changes the course in a lot of ways.
Yes, totally, 100%. And I think another sort of quirk of this course is that there's a number of areas where you have to cross pavement. So that kind of leaves a choice for runners. It's, am I going to put spikes in my shoes, even though they're going to be sort of clicking on the pavement, but I'm going to get some extra traction on those grass and those dirt sections? Or am I going to wear racing flats, or maybe take the spikes out of my racing shoes, knowing that I'm going to have to run on the pavement? So I think that can sometimes explain why athletes run slower times on this course, and how important it is to just stay mentally in it when it might feel a little bit awkward running on pavement in your spikes. If you could just kind of keep that out of mind.
Sure, especially given there are a few stretches of pavement, but they're relatively small, I think, for the overall percentage of the whole course.
Yeah, so as long as you don't let those sections get you out of rhythm, I think you're going to be okay. Looks like we've got, again, those 2 runners, Charlotte Murphy of Taft, Lily Lyons of Greenwich Academy, neck and neck, side by side, as we come to the 1 mile mark, which you can see sort of in our shot. We've got someone in an orange vest there to give the runners their 1 mile splits, as well as sort of a mobile clock. So
we have a good view of the runners coming through here as they pass the mile marker, as you mentioned, and those lines that merge again, which will happen on their way back through nearer to the end of the race.
This is a great shot because you see our top 2 runners, but you can also see some of the teams vying for that team title in the back. You know, some strong packs there of Loomis Chafee runners, Andover runners. Gosh, again, this is going to be a close one when it comes to the team title, and so far it's going to be a close one too on the individual title as well.
It'll be exciting to see these 2 runners push each other through the tougher parts of this course. It's nice to see they're working together, even though they're from different teams here.
Working together and looking really smooth. No one sort of visibly struggling, keeping their composure, breathing well.
Runners are just coming through, about to pass by the start of the race again.
Yep.
passing through here, really running through this spot for the second time. They're going to come through here really a third and fourth time to finish out the race as well.
Yep, and it looks like we've got, oh, here we go. Yep, Charlotte Murphy of Taft starting to get in the lead. Strong pack of Loomis runners right there, led by Natalie Crocker of Loomis Chafee. I think how things shake out there, whether Natalie Crocker can start to put some gaps, is really going to determine how Loomis does in the team scoring. Again, the energy here is great. We can hear, we've got some speakers playing. People are cheering. This great sort of shoot of fans on either side for athletes.
It makes a big difference, I think, to give them a little burst of energy every time they're running through fans, friends, teammates, etc. Especially, it'll be especially important when we see them come through here the second time, which will be in between those two tough uphill climbs that they'll make at that second half of the race.
Yep, we got some runners here running past the cemetery. Yes, that is a cemetery on a school campus. Not for students, though, obviously. It's Old Town Cemetery, the old Salisbury Town Cemetery.
Good shot of Elfers in the background, too, where we're watching the race from.
Yes, exactly. Great shot of Elfers Patio, so Hotchkiss's music hall. And, yeah, this race, again, lots of runners sort of clumped together. So much can happen over the course of these next couple of miles. Great shot there. You can get a sense of the fans cheering people on.
After they move through this kind of crowded, popular section,
right,
in the center of the course where all of the fans are, they're going to be going into a nice downhill drop before turning back up at the lake to start their climb.
And, you know, we've been talking a lot on this podcast about the undulating nature of this course, the ups, the downs, and I think that's that is one of the things that can really play into the race strategy as well, and something that athletes might have been preparing for as they've been training and doing their workouts this week, is just practicing not just running uphill but running downhills and going into these downhill right-hand turns.
It's a real skill,
yeah,
actually. I mean, I think it's not necessarily something that comes naturally to everybody. It certainly doesn't for me.
All right, I think that's Nola Lai, one of our Hotchkiss athletes, coming through, fearless team captain this year. Awesome to see a shot of her. Here we go. Back to that view of this sort of downhill paved section before Cardiac Hill. Again, it's a beautiful day out here. The sun is shining. Wind's even starting to calm down a little bit.
As we move through the trees here, we can see the line reappear. That's the steep hill of the course, the steepest hill of the course, and the first of two hard hills that they climb up.
And it looks like we've got Charlotte Murphy here
just
of Taft. Yeah, making the turn. We'll see what happens here. Let's see if we can see maybe Charlotte will separate, increase that gap, or maybe Lily will make it up.
It's impressive to see how this happened in the boys' race too. It's a little bit hard to see. This angle is helping to see how steep actually. I mean, when you run this, it kind of feels like you're hitting a wall a little bit.
It really does.
But the runners look like they're taking this hill with a lot of power and strength, which is, I think, a testament to their training and probably training on some good hills wherever they're coming from.
Totally, right? And yeah, just that pre-race preparation, just knowing that the hill's coming and just committing beforehand to powering through it and making some kind of move.
And of course, wherever you're running, wherever you're training regularly, these teams are kind of finding and seeking out hills to make sure that they're practicing on them. Certainly our course is not the only one that's hilly. We've had, cross-country practices where we're doing specific hills, training for specific races at particular schools and courses, so it's an important piece of training.
Totally, 100%. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a pancake flat cross-country course, especially out here in New England. Another shot here. It looks like Charlotte Murphy's starting to increase her lead over Lily Lyons of Greenwich Academy. It really looks like this is starting to pan out, much like the boys' race, where this could be Charlotte Murphy's race to lose. And I don't know, it's hard to tell at this point whether or not that course record is in jeopardy, but I think it's going to be close.
This is the spot really where it opened up in the boys' race too. I think such an important stretch here. We're about to see them cross in front of us. Again, they're kind of just above the lake here. And as you mentioned in the previous race, even after runners have crested the top of this really steep hill, it continues. It kind of lingers for a while in a way that's sometimes a little bit uncomfortable. It will flatten out a little bit as they move through the second mile marker, which
right
the
there.
lead runner just did, yes.
Yeah, right there, 11. Coming in at under 12 minutes. Yeah, I mean, if she can close these last, 1.1 miles in around 6 minutes, maybe under 16:15 or 6:15, course record could be in jeopardy. Again, Charlotte Murphy out here having a day.
This is a little bit a spot where the course flattens out a little bit. It's very brief where the course flattens up. So you can kind of, I wouldn't call it a recovery. She's going pretty quickly, but reset a little bit before you get into the next hill, which is Torrey's Hill. Not as steep as Cardiac, but at this point in the race, running on legs that have just carried them up Cardiac, it's a tough part of the race for sure.
Here we go. We've got a nice shot again of that sort of part of the course after the steep hill where it doesn't really let up. You got a lot of runners running. Who do we got here? Loomis runner in front. Looks like a St. Paul's runner. Perhaps a Windsor Academy runner behind. Making their way back down that fourth fairway. Yeah, right here. You think it's flat coming off that hill, but it is not. It continues to climb a little bit, and it's a little bit slanted and off camber, so a little bit uphill, a little bit awkward. You can see just how densely packed this race is right here. This is where things on the team scoring side are really going to start to shuffle when we figure out who can hold their composure through these uphill sections and who's going to start to fade.
This combination of hills, I think, really highlights the importance and the value. I know I heard this a lot when I was coaching cross country, of running not to the top of the hill, but really through the top of the hill. I think if they're accustomed to kind of stopping at the top of that hill, the rest of this stretch and the final hill up Torrey's is a little bit challenging. But I think when they're in the practice of training their bodies to really stay strong and maybe even surge through the top of that hill, feels like a tall order at the top of Cardiac. But I think that's where we see some of the runners really assert their strength.
Totally. So you can see a lot of runners here sort of closely packed. The gaps aren't that big. There's going to be some moves being made on this last climb from about, 2.5 miles to, or about, I'd say from that sort of 2.25 mile mark to that 3.25 mile mark. There's going to be a lot of movement here in these packs. Again, the time on the clock right now in the 14:20s. Here's that shot.
So this is Torrey's Hill now, running up. Torrey's Hill really kind of has a hill and then a slightly flatter section and then another hill. It can kind of play with you a little bit when you're running up it, especially when you're running on tired legs. But this will be a key part of the race, especially for some of these lead runners. Yeah,
it looks like we've got, again, Charlotte Murphy of Taft in the lead here, who's put seems like quite a big gap on Lily Lyons. Can't even really see her as of yet in the frame. Michelle, if you're Charlotte Murphy right now, you've got 800 meters to go as you round this light post here, what's on your mind? What are you thinking?
I'd be interested to know how she's feeling. I hope, I think having that lead that she has, and especially knowing now that she's just cresting this, perhaps, as you mentioned before, it can be a little bit tempting to try to, if you have this energy, really start to sprint from here. But I think they know their training and know how long they can sustain particular speeds, right? So she's going to have sort of degrees of sprinting at the end of this and knows when it's time for her to really implement her kick at the end. But this is a powerful stretch of the race here.
Totally. I'm looking at the projected results here. Charlotte Murphy, again, came into this race projected to finish second behind Lily Lyons in her fastest time this year so far, 18:32, and it looks like that was run at the Loomis Chafee course, which
is a flat course.
Is a pretty flat course, but
yeah.
I mean, she is just on track to absolutely blow away this field. 16:20 on the clock right now with maybe at this point about 600 or so meters to go. Course record might not be out of the question here depending on what kind of sprint she has at the end. Either way, this is going to be a really impressive time on this course.
We're about to see her. She's sort of rounding the last of the dorm buildings here, and we'll see her curve to the right around this tree as she's getting ready to round the observatory, and then it'll be kind of that final straightaway that you were talking about before.
Yeah.
Again, maybe a little bit longer than runners anticipate once they get there, but it is kind of, they can see the finish. It's this final stretch of the race.
Yeah, and Charlotte Murphy, she is looking smooth. Her cadence has not dropped off. I think she is, if I had to guess, she is definitely riding the high of knowing that this individual title is hers and that perhaps even the course record is in grasp.
Great view of her coming around
Yep.
the corner here for that final straightaway. We'll have a couple of trees here in this final straightaway too, but she's got her eye on the finish.
She has definitely got her eye on the finish. It's 17:34 right now, as you can see on the clock. Passing Dana Dormitory, where I happen to live. Here we go.
We have a dramatic finish here, I think, with this open straightaway and all of the
Here we
the
go.
fans. Wow, this
Approaching the
is
finish. Yep.
incredible.
There we go. Charlotte Murphy,
Wow.
18:01, and
Great
that is a
race.
new course record.
Great race.
How
That's
cool.
exciting. 2 course records, Sam.
2 course records on the day. And how exciting it is that Sammy Glass was here. Well, I guess, I'd assume she'd be glad to see her own course record broken.
I think it's true. I think it is really exciting. Of course, it's nice to have your name in the record books, but to also, I think really special for both of them to kind of get to hand it off in that way. I think that's really exciting.
Okay, and this is an interesting development. An Andover runner coming in second ahead of Lily Lyons.
About 30 seconds back or so from the start. That did open up a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and if I'm looking at the pre-race predictions, there's not really an Andover runner until 8th, so someone today must have had a really great race.
We're seeing the runners walk through that final chute,
Yeah.
trying to walk off that run a little bit, trying to walk off those hills.
Oh, totally. Yeah, boy, in some ways that can be one of the hardest parts of the race is, like we said before, you finish running your heart out for 3.1 miles, and then you gotta stay on your feet and keep walking through the chute to kind of give your bib number to the race officials.
It's nice to see, close finishes, but I'm happy that all of these finishes are really clean too. There are no kind of scrambling at the finish here.
Yeah.
Clear decisions being made. I'm sure it'll tighten up a little bit as we're already starting to see here as more runners come through. But we've got a lot of volunteers in place trying to keep people in their order. That
Totally.
was a tight finish just there with 3 runners coming in right at about the same time also.
Yeah, and again, some of those runners and teams that are going to be vying for this team title, be curious to see how things shake out.
We've got a lot of Hotchkiss volunteers here in line. Shout out to the volunteers who are helping people through the chute.
I know it's a super busy day for, well, Hotchkiss faculty, and I'm sure faculty in many schools as well. We've got many of our faculty have traveled over to Taft, where Taft Day, the sort of annual Hotchkiss-Taft rivalry, is happening.
We also have a lot of coaches, coming from all over. Some schools coming here yesterday with long drives
Totally.
to get themselves rested for today. So
Totally, right. So shout out to all the coaches and volunteers today. Again, this race, super spread out, a testament to just how fast those lead groups were running, setting a super quick pace.
what did you think about how fast they went out in this race? Was it what you were expecting? You were talking about different race strategies. Did they go out kind of as aggressively as you were expecting or more so?
I think they might have even gone out a little more aggressively
Yeah.
than I was expecting. Although, again, the first mile of this course really trends downhill. And
Sure.
I think if, it's the last race of the season, championship race,
Yeah.
this is not the time to be conservative. And I think on this course, you really got to take the time where you can get it. And one of the places where you can get it is in that first mile. So, yeah, I guess, on second thought, I wasn't that surprised to see the boys race go out in about 4:40 and the girls race to go out in about 5:40.
Sure.
For that first mile.
I think in addition to their attention to pacing on a course like this, where the whole first mile is downhill and all of the uphills are in the second half, they're also thinking just about what that does to their quads, right? That they're as they're running downhill, it's kind of putting a little bit of pressure on their quads. Again, they're training for all of this, but that's something that they're keeping in mind also to kind of prepare not just aerobically for this race and for this course, but to make sure that their strength is what it needs to be and that they're using it well.
I think one of the great things, Granite State Timing has live results of this race that we might be able to check to get a sense of the team score and how different athletes are finishing here. Again, great shot of the finish line here. We see athletes closing in that last. Oh, here we go. See, this is what I'm talking about. These are the sort of things that decide cross-country races, right? Passing people right at the line like that, getting, all those little points matter. Again, great to see our athletes coming in strong. Again, another little fight at the finish here. Boom, that's 2 points for that Deerfield runner.
One of the things that I love about cross-country races, and most cross-country courses will set up a finish like this where we have a very visible finish, is that all of their efforts are really on display. You can really see it up close and personally. And it's great that the runners have this many, fans, teammates lining their finish like this.
Totally. Another shot of Charlotte Murphy, our individual champion here and new course record holder. I believe she is a senior, super talented runner. I'll be curious to hear or learn about if she'll be running in college and where that might be.
It's exciting to see a senior have a good last meet here.
Totally, yeah. So, for folks who don't know, in terms of NEPSTA or NEPSAC, this is the last meet of the year. This is the creme de la creme. But some of these athletes, they might go on to compete at a couple of other meets. Could be Foot Locker Nationals, which is where the top individuals in the country go to race. Or if you have a really strong team, you might try to have a go at Nike Cross Nationals, right? The regional meets being later this month around Thanksgiving. All right.
Still some runners crossing the finish line here. A few coming through the straightaway. Still some close races, actually. We still have some packs of 3 and 4 running in together, pushing themselves across that finish line. We can see them crossing here at 24:38.
Exactly. Again, all these places matter. There's Jamie Huang, Hotchkiss runner. Trying to get a sense of the team standings right here by looking at the live results. It looks like it might take some time for those to get updated.
Yeah, we can keep refreshing these pages and kind of read them out once they're available on the website here.
Yes, totally. We'll keep you all posted at home.
We're seeing some of the post-race celebration here among some runners.
Totally right. Big high five. If you're sure, again, we sort of referenced it earlier. Today is, or at least at Hotchkiss we call it Taft Day. Maybe at Taft they call it Hotchkiss Day. But, big rivalry, big sports rivalry between, or school rivalry between Taft and Hotchkiss. And I guess if you're Charlotte Murphy, you're not only happy to win the individual title, you're also super happy to be contributing to your team's Taft Day score. And
school's overall score.
School's overall scoring. Yeah, no better place to set a course record and to win a NEPSAC cross-country title than on your rival school's course. Super special for Charlotte Murphy.
I think a lot of these schools will see some of those rivalries when we get into the awards at the end. We'll try to keep everybody posted and updated on the scores as they come in, but there will be an award ceremony after all of these races are completed later today. We've gone through boys and girls varsity races. We still have both JV races coming up at 240 and 325, and they'll head over to do their award ceremony after that. And sometimes we can see those rivalries and competitions come out in those awards.
Yeah,
ceremonies
sometimes
as well.
lots of cheering, sometimes jeering, but again, we were talking about this before, and it's always good-natured. I think there's something about cross country. There's something about running.
They're spending a lot of time in their heads. It's nice to connect maybe with teammates and rival schools and push each other in that way.
Yeah,
And it makes them run faster, right? I mean, this is what we were saying about any of these close races that, I think when they're racing, they have a real kind of game time mindset that's important, and that they're competitive with each other to make themselves run faster. But I think they all really want the same thing also in those fast runs.
Yeah, maybe that is one of the beautiful things about running, is that everyone in that race is working towards a common goal, which is just to run as well as they can. And I think, you see that after a race, runners are congratulating each other, giving each other hugs, giving each other high fives, certainly congratulating their own teammates, but congratulating other schools' teammates as well. And I think it's just that acknowledgement that, hey, we're all here to do the same thing, which is to give it our all. And it's great to see athletes recognizing that in each other, across schools, across teams. For the folks at home, we're looking around. It is an absolute scene here outside of Hotchkiss. So many fans have come out today to support our runners. It's really beautiful to see. Again, great shot of campus.
The wind is dying down a little bit, but I saw some whitecaps on the lake out there earlier today. Which kind of shows you how windy it's been.
Yeah, and it looks like the JV races are going to maybe get some better conditions wind-wise, so they might be excited about that. But you never know; the wind could pick up again. But here we go. Yeah, you're getting a great shot here of that start-finish line area, that observatory we've been talking about. That features prominently at the beginning and the end of the races.
Maybe we can interview some runners later and find out if the wind, in fact, helped them. If the wind was at their back as they cross through the finish line here.
Yeah, I'll be curious to know whether or not the runners felt like they were aided a little bit.
Might be hard for them to appreciate that or to feel it at that point in the race. But
I know, a hill is a hill is a hill. Doesn't matter what kind of tailwind you have. Awesome. All right, so again, for those just tuning in, we've just concluded the girls' Division I varsity NEPSTA cross-country race. Charlotte Murphy taking the individual title there in a course record time of 18:01. We'll keep people updated as team results are posted live through Granite State timing.
I want to ask our cross-country coaches when the last time we were 2 for 2 on course records was.
My goodness. Well, yeah, that's got to be...
It's pretty impressive.
It's got to be a while. Almost wonder whether we can see when the past 2 course records were and how long they stood. Our old boys course record ran by Sidi Abdullahi of NMH in 2014. Again, that old time of 15:54 has gone down today.
And Sammy Glass was just the year before in 2013, so that would have been her senior year as well.
Exactly, right? So yeah, these records, they've stood for about 10 years now, and they finally come down. But, that tends to happen. If I had to guess, this past girls' record was probably run at the New England Championship when it was last hosted at Hotchkiss, which I think would have been...
I think it was 2014,
would have been 2014, actually.
So I think the boys' record was probably from New England's, I have to imagine.
You're right. And, maybe And so perhaps then Sammy Glass running that time at the Founders League title, because I
Perhaps,
know
yeah, the
something
year
about the
before.
way the rotations of hosting goes. Hotchkiss tends to host Founders always in the year preceding the year that they host New England's,
It's a
right?
nice little preview for the New England Championship then, perhaps.
Totally, and great preparation for all of our volunteers and our coaches and everyone helping to make sure the meet goes smoothly, right? They can sort of get their systems dialed the year before with the Founders League Championship, an important race, a championship race, but a little bit smaller field.
Sure. And, I mean, we can kind of see, actually, with this shot that we have right now, a little bit of the undertaking
Yeah.
that it is for folks to put on this meet between the timing systems and all of the volunteers and everyone working around campus to host as many runners and fans that we have on campus today.
I know, yeah, it really is an undertaking, and we're just super appreciative of all the people who are making this day run smoothly. I think we should give a special shout out to the head coaches of our hosting teams here. Coach Kira Sheikh on the girls' side. You know, I actually share an office with her. We're both U.S. history teachers, and I know how much work she has been putting into organizing this meet and making sure that everything goes smoothly. So huge shout out to her. Again, another huge shout out to Coach Pierre Yu, the head coach of our boys cross-country team over here at Hotchkiss. Again, you know, sending emails, getting spreadsheets together, getting everything ready to go for this meet. He's been indispensable.
It's a good
as
blend
well.
of skills in terms of organizing, and then also hopefully they can focus today a little bit more on coaching their athletes.
100%, yeah. I mean, that is one of the tough things when you are the host school. You know, there's this fine balance between you are hosting the meet at large, and yet you're also the coach of your teams, and you want to make sure you're supporting your runners, but also supporting other teams and other coaches as well.
It's an exciting thing, I think, anytime for athletes when their school is hosting any big meet like this, that there is, you know, a bit of an advantage in knowing the course, or perhaps just kind of the comfort of running in your own course, which our runners might have a love-hate relationship with our course, but I think it's special to all of them, even if they're cursing the hills at times.
Yeah, and certainly, you know, if you're hosting, you get to, you know, Hotchkiss being a residential boarding school, our athletes got to wake up this morning, have breakfast in the dining hall. They didn't have to travel, get on a bus, so they've had ample time to prepare, get a good night's sleep, so on and so forth.
No classes this morning, of course, also, which we
Yeah.
can tell ourselves is in honor of the cross-country meet.
Right. No, it definitely doesn't happen every year on this weekend. It's just for the cross country. No. Here we go. Great. Another beautiful shot. You actually see, you know, our campus kind of sandwiched in between two lakes. The one in the foreground here, Lake Winonscompomic. The other one, definitely start Lake Wanna something. I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure.
Because everybody calls it the hockey pond.
Yeah, I think it's Lake Winonscompomic and Wanascope Muck. It's very
Just
similar,
behind
but
the
they are
track right
different.
here,
Yeah,
right?
just well, oh yeah, so just behind the track, yeah, those two, those are the hockey ponds.
Yeah.
I think they got that name because way back in the day, it used to, you know, when it would freeze over in the winter, our hockey team would actually play on that pond. You know, before the construction of the rink. But yeah, beautiful campus, sort of encircled here by this golf course.
We can see a lot of the woods also that runners are often spending a lot of time running on as well. Our cross-country course, of course, doesn't go through the woods like a lot of cross-country courses do. I'm sort of partial to those courses, I think, running on trails in the woods, but they get that on some practice days anyway, as long as they're careful of bears.
Yeah, sort of zooming in here. Nice little garden. You can also see in the top right, kind of coming out of frame now, but Dana Dormitory, one of the more unique buildings on campus for its brutalist architecture. You know, I live in Dana Dorm. I've lived there for the past 4 years. We affectionately like to say it has the worst architecture, but the best community. It's definitely kind of labyrinthy on the inside. Again, spare us, listeners. I promised people I would give Dana Dormitory a little shout out at some point in this broadcast. So
It features prominently on the cross-country course, too.
It does.
It's an important spot at the beginning and end of this course. So.
It does. If you're dorm head Cooper Pulse, you can even sit on your little patio right there, watch the runners start and finish. But enough about Dana. We've got, again, some teams getting in their huddles, doing their chants. We've even got the Loomis Pelican here.
I didn't know we were getting a pelican. That's exciting.
My
That's
goodness.
impressive.
That's very impressive.
Looks like a pelican that's ready to go play hockey, maybe.
Yeah, it looks like it has some sort of a hockey jersey on.
And we're only about 5 minutes away from the JV boys race, so we're seeing them start to get ready here in their huddles, in their pep talks, and warming up a little bit as well as they get ready for the start of this race.
And again, the JV race, this is where you get to, get a good sense of, what do the future of these teams look like? Are they going to be able to replace those graduating seniors? What kind of depth do these teams have?
I like to see in all of these races, too. This is true certainly at some of the smaller league championship meets also, that I think it can be really helpful for runners to get some practice in some of these big meets. Of course, they have been running in meets all along, but there's a different feeling to a championship meet like this. It's bigger. There are more people. It can be a little bit nerve-wracking, I think. And so I think there's great practice both in having some gradual championship meets that maybe get bigger as you go, right? A lot of these teams were at their league championship meets last weekend, and they're kind of stepping up to a bigger meet here at New England's with some teams that they haven't seen before. And so to have a chance to run at those meets even, before you're in the varsity race, before you're in the top 5, top 7 of your team is a great way to practice and prepare yourself for a bigger meet down the road, a bigger meet next year, or a varsity meet as well.
Yeah, you make a great point. I mean, these championship meets bring out a totally different atmosphere than, perhaps maybe your dual meets where you're maybe running against one or a few other schools during the middle of the season. I mean, the crowds here are big. It is loud. You've got people with cowbells, tons of noise. That can be a totally new experience for, let's say a freshman who it's their first year on the cross-country team, but, it's clear that they've got those aspirations to be on the varsity squad one day. Another big difference with these championship meets as well, maybe if you're running a dual meet, it's on your home course, you've got 1 or 2 schools showing up. There's a projected start time, but, things are run a little bit more in a relaxed fashion. If someone needs an emergency bathroom break, they'll
wait for you.
They'll wait for them to get to the line and whatnot. But here at these championship meets, they're not messing around, right? If the race is supposed to start at in this case 2:40, that gun's going to go off at 2:40 whether you're on the line or not. So it's important that these younger athletes get to practice, starting your warm up on time, getting to the line on time, figuring out, how do I time? When do I put my spikes on? When do I take my sweats off?
Pierre's, in fact, already blowing the whistle for the 2:40 race, so we're going to be right on time, I think.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, well, our good friend, head coach of the boys team, Pierre Yu, big fan of punctuality.
I think it's important to notice and to point out we've been talking about the great crowds, all of the fans who are here. It does create a different vibe, a different energy. I think for a lot of them it can be really exciting and inspiring. They can really use that, but it is also great to get a chance to practice with it a little bit, that it can be easy to get nervous or to maybe go out too fast or something like that. And so for them to have a chance to really use that, figure out how to best draw from the crowds is important.
And we're off. Yeah, we're off in the boys JV cross country race. Oh, there's a dog on the course. Uh-oh. Someone didn't leash their dog. This is incredible. Actually, when I was in high school, this happened at one of our league meets. I went to high school in Rhode Island, and it was actually my best friend's dog. Oh no, someone's got to get that guy under control.
I've never seen that before.
That is something.
I hope that this doesn't interrupt any runners, although it doesn't seem to be.
I know.
I
mean, that dog could probably take second if it wanted to. That is something else. Well, all sorts of things can happen here.
I guess so.
And I have to imagine eventually at one point that dog's going to get bored. Already it looks like it's wandered
dropped off.
Yeah, it's dropped off. But
no, it's
no, it's still there. It's still there. Oh my goodness. Hey.
Do we give this dog a jersey and attribute it to a particular team if it wins?
Looks like it's
heading off course.
Oh,
now.
looks
Okay.
like someone's there ready to.
Oh,
Oh no! This is something. Well, it's been fun to watch the dog, but I think we want to get back to
we'll
this.
return to the runners.
Yeah, let's give some attention to the humans here.
One runner out in front.
Yeah.
Even earlier than in some other races that we've seen already today.
I think so. Again, we were talking earlier about the atmosphere here at this race, and we've also been talking about, the fact that 2 course records have gone down today, and some really fast times have been run. And I think, there's something to all of that, where the atmosphere really gets people to go out hard. They hear the crowd cheering, and the adrenaline starts pumping, and people just end up running faster than I think even they thought they could.
Especially if this is the first race people are watching here today, just to kind of reiterate where we are in the course. They're crossing the main entrance of Hotchkiss's campus right now. This is one of the really few short stints of pavement that they'll be on. And in the first half mile or so of this course, they're kind of looping around to the top of a hill that they'll then descend. So a little bit rolling in this opening part,
Yep.
but for the most part, especially relative to the rest of the course, this is a flatter part. You see them running by the bulls, which are a little bit hard to see right here, but that's sort of an important artistic feature of our campus.
True.
And as they run by these beach volleyball courts, they'll be kind of turning around to the left to descend down Torrey's Hill, which is one of the big hills on the course.
Yeah, Torrey's Hill following Route 41, one of the main roads that comes through town here. Yeah, I'll be curious when once we get a little closer shot who this might be, or at least what school they run for. But yeah, someone has taken this race out fast.
We certainly see too in some schools that have deep rosters that a school may very well have an 8th runner who could be competitive in the varsity race, but since schools are limited to 7 runners, they might really run away with the JV race as this runner is doing to start.
Yeah, and for an athlete like that, that can even be a really special moment, getting to run at the front like this and win a race.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which, they might not otherwise get an opportunity to do that, say if they had made that, if they were sort of the 7th guy on their varsity squad.
It's an interesting point to think about what role sort of the context of the race plays, right? That some people really prefer to be out in front like this. Some people really prefer to chase someone. And so the difference in where somebody falls, especially if they're on the line between 7 and 8 on their team roster, could create a very different context for the race.
I know it might be a little bit different in swimming where you're in lanes and you might be somewhat hard to see your competition, but when you were racing, where did you like to be? Were you someone who liked to race from the front or who liked to come from behind? I
like having someone in front of me that I'm chasing. I think if ever I didn't have that, I think I was trying to imagine that, even if it didn't exist, I would sort of pretend that someone was there. But it's sort of like you were saying before, that you don't want to be running in no man's land. Maybe more exciting and inspiring for this runner who's already out in front, that they're maybe looking to maintain that lead throughout the rest of the race. But I think it can be, I liked having something of a pack and someone that I was chasing in running or swimming, I think.
Yeah, I'm sort of the opposite. I loved having people that I had to hold off. Right? That was always fun for me.
Good shot of this runner now just kind of curving around the bottom of that hill and now continuing through really the main part of this course, which runners come through about 4 times from start to finish.
Yeah, and if you're looking at the screen here, you've got 2 Exeter runners in front, and I'm also seeing quite a number of Exeter jerseys kind of in the front of this pack. So again, I said it earlier in the broadcast, but Exeter's one of those teams, at least on the boys' side, that consistently has depth in the varsity and in the JV races. So again, go ahead.
We're a few steps beyond now, but they've just to note, they've just gone through the 1 mile marker. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh yeah, no worries. But yeah, the future of Exeter's team looking bright from what we're seeing here in the JV race.
That pack behind these lead maybe 3 runners or so is quite big and packed in together, which we'll see. Oh, here it is on the screen now. Yeah, it's a lot of people packed in together.
Yeah, and you tend to see that a little bit more in the JV races because you can bring up to 15 runners in this race. Again, only the top 5 will score and only the top 7 can displace, but yeah, I'm not surprised to see this sort of large clump here.
So you can see them running by these flags behind them. That's the chute. That's where they'll finish. Maybe a little bit of a tease to see the end of the race as they're coming through here. They still have a ways to go.
Yep.
But they will loop through here a couple of times before finishing. This is the first time they're looping through.
Just looking out here from Elfer's Patio, also what we're seeing on the screen, great examples of what we call pack running. Groups of 3 runners from the same team running together, talking to each other, pushing each other. I think sometimes when you're in a big race like this, there's tons of people in front of you, there's tons of people behind you. You can kind of feel like you're lost in a sea of runners, and having some contact with a teammate can be really reassuring and help bring out the best in you.
Especially when you've been training together too, right?
Totally.
I think sometimes those runners might know how each other trains and can kind of respond to and encourage in ways that are helpful.
Totally. You might have someone you're running with on your team who's really good at pushing the pace on the hills,
sure,
right? And you might sort of send them in front, and you just tell yourself, hey, I just got to follow my buddy.
Right.
And then, you might have someone who's a little better on the flats or who you think's going to push you at the end. And
I like when we see teammates kind of talking to each other and cheering each other on too. And
yeah, saying, hey, let's go. Let's make some moves. Let's pass some people. Every place counts. And that's always sweet to see.
The front of the pack here now coming down a pretty big hill on this campus as well, on this course. So this lead runner finishing this downhill, and then he will turn right onto the lake road to get ready for the steepest hill on the course.
Totally, right? Kind of a tough right-hand turn here. You've got so much.
It is. It's quick.
Yeah, it's quick. You've got so much pace coming downhill, and then you got to make this turn.
And this is one of the few stretches, still not super long, but the longest stretch of pavement. It gets gravelly, actually, at the bottom of this hill. Yep. But one of the few stretches that's not grass, really, on this whole course.
Yeah, and there might be opportunities for runners to run on the grass, but it's not super flattened. So I think many of them are just going to opt to run on the pavement.
I think, like you said before, even if you're wearing spikes, it's a short stretch.
Yeah.
You'll get back into the grass pretty quickly on this hill.
Yep, and you just got to remember that as a runner. Don't let that phase you. It does it. You'll hear the click, click, clack.
Sure.
It feels a little awkward because you've essentially got these spikes on the bottom of your feet that are now not going into the ground. But it's not impossible, and if you, again, just don't let it phase you.
So we can see the line here. This lead runner is turning right and getting ready to climb up Cardiac Hill, the steepest hill on the course, the first of 2 tough hills that these runners will climb, and he's on his own out in front.
He's on his own out in front, and again, I think this is one of those situations, like you were talking about, Michelle, where here's a runner who, on any other day, would have been pretty competitive in that varsity race, and it just turns out that this year, like most years, Phillips Exeter has a ton of depth, and so this athlete's going to have this chance to win the JV race.
And like you said, it might be that he's responding really well to that feeling of being out in front, right? That this is a big confidence boost to be leading the race in this way. I like to see, you can kind of see it on that shot when we saw him climbing up this hill, that you can kind of see runners shift gears as they turn that corner to climb the hill, and that you see a lot of power and strength in their strides as they're coming up the hill, kind of shifting into another gear than they would be when they're on flatter ground or certainly going downhill, and we can see that pretty well.
Yeah, really good racers know when they need to play it conservative and when they need to push. And I think on this race, the time to be somewhat conservative is maybe from the mile mark to approaching Cardiac Hill, right? You don't want to go too early. You need to save something for that hill. But once you hit the hill, you don't want to be conservative anymore.
Sure.
You really want to be powerful and make sure you don't let that hill interrupt your rhythm.
And maybe in this section here, again, this is a continuation of a climb. We're still going uphill in this, the majority of this pack. The lead runner getting ready to approach the 2-mile mark, coming up right here, and he'll get to enjoy a short stint of flatter, a kind of drop down before climbing up Torrey's Hill again.
Yep, totally. So 2-mile mark would be around here, coming through in about 11:10 or so. So yeah, he's set to run a pretty good time as well.
And I think, as you were saying, strategy around when to be conservative, when to be aggressive. I think this stretch, we've mentioned it before, this is a hard stretch in between these two hills, but it's a good spot to kind of position yourself, prepare yourself for that final hill and get yourself in a spot that you want to be. And sometimes being aggressive here, even as you're preparing to climb a hill, can be important.
Yeah, I think it can be, we see the Andover runner there making some moves. I think it can be tough to try to gain position on the hills, just because, when you're running uphill like that, any extra effort you put in to go a little bit faster is just that much harder as you're essentially fighting gravity. So I think, smart races. Oh, that was just missed it on the broadcast. The runners high-fived each other. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, I think to your point, to try to be worrying about passing people on the hill also. I mean, I think we often see it on this stretch where they are right now, that they want to position themselves well. We're still seeing it actually at the front of that pack, people kind of moving around to get themselves in a good spot for the bottom of Torrey's Hill.
Yeah.
You see the two lines converging here again, too. Of course, this is where they kind of split off and go in one direction as they're looping back around and coming through from the other side. And then from here on out, the rest of the course they've already seen, right? They're just repeating in reverse direction the first mile or so of the course.
Yeah, so it should be some pretty familiar terrain for these runners. Looks like we've got a good shot of some of the runners that are in front, not our lead runner.
And already onto the hill. You can see the cones here, too. I mean, this is where they're kind of like blocking off space on the road, but all of these runners taking the grass right on the line to get up that hill, which I think is smart, especially depending on the shoes they're wearing.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe if you're not wearing racing spikes, maybe you're a little better off running on the road.
I was thinking of that, though, this morning on the course. I mean, you're even swinging wider to go into the road. So even for that reason alone, I think running on the grass is nice. It might also be, I'm old and my joints need soft surface beneath my feet. These runners don't need to worry about that yet.
No, not at all. Yeah, no, you make a good point. Yeah, if you choose the road, yes, maybe it's a flatter, faster surface, but you're making the course longer technically.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a good point there.
One of the things I like about our course highlights this, but I think this would be true in any course, maybe just running generally, is we talked earlier about the tapering process and kind of trusting your training and trusting your body, and especially as you're trying to calculate when to be aggressive, when to be conservative, what kind of strategy you want to use on the race. I think they really need to know their bodies, know their endurance, and also to be bold and try to push themselves to achieve something faster than they've done before. They have to kind of press a little bit, and we'll see that on this course.
Oh, yeah, and really interesting the way this race is developing. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 runners who all seem to be at about equal intervals.
Sure.
And, that gap between the first runner and the runner in second has been shrinking over the course of this race. I almost wonder if our Exeter runner in the lead perhaps went out a little bit too fast, and whether or not we're going to see some exciting finishes here as we get to this last half mile.
Yeah, they are all at this kind of equal distance apart from each other, approximately, and it's far enough that I think it's a challenge, but also one that you could imagine a good kick closing, especially in this last half mile or so.
Yeah, no, not impossible for things to change here as this runner in second.
He's got him in his sights for sure.
He's got him in his sights and seems to be making up some ground. I'll be curious to see, just for context for the viewers, they're crossing the road here, and then it's going to dip downhill a little bit, and then back uphill. It's going to be these sort of rolling hills. So
these are the spots that are these rolling hills right here are so subtle, but at the end of the race, I think you feel them. So they're dropping down here a little bit, and then they'll kind of lift back up before they hit the observatory.
An interesting point on race strategy is if you're the runner in the lead right now, right? So this runner in red, this Exeter runner, or if you're this Andover runner, right? You get ahead of this Exeter runner. As you start to curve around this sort of bushy green tree, if you make a move, I've always thought that if you can make moves, right? If you can put in a little push at a moment where you get out of sight of the runner trying to chase you down, it makes it really hard for them to catch you because they don't know that the gap has widened and they didn't get a chance to cover that move. But,
sure.
It looks like they're close enough now that those sorts of tactics aren't really going to be employed. And, boy, I think we're shaping up to have a really close finish here.
Worth noting that Andover and Exeter are one of those rivalries we were talking about earlier as well. So they've got that in their minds also as they're closing in on the end of this race.
100%. Here we go, side by side.
There's the observatory again, so we're coming around. You were mentioning before just trying to be smart about this finish, and when we have this a tight race like this. Yeah.
Super smart. Speaking of tactics, that Andover runner making a great decision to pass on that inside there. The Exeter runner leaving that space for him.
Right.
And now let's see who can close. Again, I cautioned earlier in this broadcast about kicking right at the observatory, but it seems to have worked pretty well here for our Andover friend.
Again, it's about knowing what you have left, right?
Yeah.
And kind of being bold about how to use what you have left, and he seems to have timed it perfectly.
Yeah, and it looks like the winner of this race will be Andover's
great finish.
17:20. Yeah, great finish. And again, that's a time that would be competitive in the varsity race, sort of in that mid-pack, looking at anywhere from 20th to 40th place. So it's great to see, these runners, we might very well see them next year.
Sure.
In the varsity race.
There's that kind of the group of 5 that you were talking about before that was kind of evenly spaced with a bit of distance between them and the larger pack.
Totally. And yeah, I think as we get along here in this race, we're going to start to see some really exciting close finishes. One thing I often notice in the JV races is, just like that, there's a lot of
teammates too there from Deerfield.
Yeah, teammates pushing each other. You get a lot of novice runners, so first and second year runners as well, who are still learning just how much they can push it out there on the course. And
right.
I often see in the JV race a lot of people have these super fast kicks because they just didn't, they've just left a lot for that finish, or there's just a lot of people to kick past. And
sure. They're trying to figure out, right, again, how to pace, how to be smart about race strategy. And the challenging thing is that sometimes that whatever you learn from one race kind of starts over a little bit on a new course, on a different course where you're facing different skills in different spots of the course. So you can see certainly in the runners who have a lot of experience, who have been on either this course before or so many different courses, that they trust that, and we're kind of seeing that work happening here in this race, especially at the finish.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some great little sprint finishes here at the end as these sort of tightly packed. Right here, it's like a Hotchkiss runner holding off a St. Paul's runner. And yeah, the chute, it's getting busy here.
Yeah, we're getting backed up a little bit.
A little bit.
We see all of they're kind of pushing everybody through, making sure this is why we have such a long chute, so they can kind of manage the order all the way through and make sure everybody has plenty of room for a good, clean, fast finish and nobody gets kind of backed up there.
Totally. Again, great scene at the end of the race here. People congratulating each other, high fives. Yeah, this is a packed race. There's a lot of runners in this race, and you can see all of our volunteers in the neon vests doing everything they can to make sure that these runners stay in the order that they finished, and keep this line moving. Because what happens is the runners will then tear off a little part of their race bib and hand it to a race official to be recorded.
There it is.
Yeah, there you go. Now you see it. Yep.
Runners doing a good job staying on their feet through this chute too, which is sometimes a challenge.
I know, right? And we've got medical staff there and people
sure.
ready to assist runners who have truly given it everything they've got.
In your experience as a coach, do you think it's harder to get people to go out fast enough, or to not be too conservative?
You know, I think it depends on the runner, right? I think some runners who really worry about fading at the end of the race maybe take it a little bit too conservative.
Sure.
Especially on courses where there's opportunities to go out fast in the first mile because it's either downhill or quite flat.
Right.
And then sometimes, you know, I think what's interesting is a lot of the athletes I've worked with, when they think about how they're going to race, they're maybe thinking a little bit too conservative. They don't really quite have, they're not thinking confidently enough to really go out and go for it in that first mile. It's a lot of times the novice runners who, on a day like today where they hear the noise of the crowds or they find themselves at the front of the pack,
Right.
end up going a lot faster in those first couple of miles than they should.
Sure. And maybe don't even feel it or notice it, right? They're just kind of caught up.
Yeah, get caught up in the moment and in the adrenaline. But yeah, I think for runners who, you know, maybe over the course of the season keep, you know, not PRing, not running as fast as they think they should based on their training, the simple solution is often go out faster. You know,
Sure.
The pace you set, and really the tone for the race that you set at the beginning of the race in that first mile. If the fitness is there and you're ready to do it, will carry you to the end of the race. But, you know, if you're leaving some time on the table in that first mile, it can be really hard to make that up. As the race goes on.
Right. I think, too, one of the important things about all of the races throughout the season is to test that a little bit. And sometimes you have to go out too fast one time to see what's too fast, what can I hold. Sometimes that can be a little bit scary.
Yeah.
But can be really helpful, I think, to have had the experience throughout the season of going out too fast, not going out fast enough, so you can kind of find the exact sweet spot and hopefully get yourself in a good spot for the last race of the season.
Totally.
So you can use that experience a little bit.
Yeah, I think if you're a runner looking for a breakthrough, looking for a PR, you got to take a risk. And,
Sure.
and maybe that means going out a little faster in that first mile than you usually do. Maybe it means committing you know, in the middle of the race,
right,
where, you know, that sort of second mile is where a lot of runners can kind of just, you know, fall asleep a little bit.
Get lost a little bit, right?
Get lost a little bit. You know, that last mile, everyone knows, okay, 1 mile to go. I'm going to start upping the pace a little bit. I'm going to start pushing. But, you know, maybe you know, resolve yourself to, you know, staying focused and making a little push in that second mile. You know, that can make all the difference. I think if you're at the more elite level, you know, depending on, you know, you might have to be a little bit more strategic about, you know, is this the type of day, if I'm going for a win, is this the type of day where it makes sense to take that kind of risk?
Right.
Certainly today, for many of our runners, it paid off, you know.
I think to your point about that middle mile, I think about this a lot and talk to athletes about this a lot in coaching. The idea that I think a lot of times we can sit in discomfort in the middle of the race, maybe a little bit better than we think we can. And it's not until you have practice doing that and get used to that feeling, you know, people call it being comfortably uncomfortable, that you're going to be okay with that actually. And you can maybe manage to go out a little bit faster than you think, especially like you were saying, if you're a novice and you're new to that.
Yeah, you know, thinking about, you know, my experience coaching track in the spring and running track, I know, you know, I was an 800 runner back in the day, and, you know, my coaches would always tell me, you know, you split this race up into 4 200-meter segments, and the spot that's either going to make or break your race in terms of time, you know, because, you know, races in terms of place can pan out in all sorts of different ways, but if you're trying to run a fast time in the 800, it's all about that middle 400 and what you do there.
Right.
I think something very similar applies to a cross-country race as well, which is 3.1 miles, which is to say that that middle mile is really where you might not gain a ton of time, but if you kind of take yourself out of it mentally and you lose that focus, or you tell yourself, okay, I'm just going to maintain the pace I've been running so far, you're going to start to lose time, because in the middle of races, when you think you're maintaining your pace,
right,
a lot of times you're really actually slowing down.
Sure. So you have to kind of assert extra attention. Sometimes it's interesting to think about how often it's really about attention, right?
Yeah.
That you have to kind of keep yourself focused on your game plan for that section of the race. If you let yourself drift a little bit, like you said, it might be really easy to drop off pace and not even realize it.
Yeah, and that's where having people to run with really makes a huge difference, because you can either focus on staying with a runner, passing runners in front of you. You can focus on holding off a runner.
Right.
For some of these, we've seen in these races today a lot of athletes taking the race out fast, creating considerable gaps between them and the rest of the competition. And so in thinking about, how these athletes are maintaining their focus through these core moments in the race, I remember as a runner, it was really about focusing on your breath and focusing on your cadence, right? Making sure you're not overstriding, that you're still getting that next foot in front of the other quickly, focusing on form. I'd have to imagine a lot of these things translate to swimming as well.
Sure, definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wonder, I think there's a real advantage. Maybe I liked this as a coach when I coached cross country here at Hotchkiss on this course, the fact that in some of those middle sections that you're talking about, the middle section of the race, maybe between the two hills, that runners are climbing in the second half of the race, that coaches are right along that straightaway, right along that stretch in between the two hills, and that they can provide a lot of those important reminders to kind of come back to. You'll often hear coaches yelling out specific things that they want runners to focus on, and I think that's a really key spot for runners to be sort of brought back to focus and attention as they prepare for the last hill and the end of the race.
Yeah, I mean, the same aspects of this course that make it a great course to spectate if you're a fan, if you're a parent, if you're a teammate. These are the same sorts of things that make it a great course to coach on. Some courses, runners will start, they'll go off and do some loops out in the woods, some sort of out and back, something like that, and it can be really challenging as a coach to try to get into the course and get to your athletes before they run by. But here you get to see them multiple times and at what I would argue are some pretty critical moments of the race, just after the first mile, just after a big hill, getting into the second mile mark, and just being able to tell your athletes things like, focus on your breath, slow your heart rate, focus on your form, use your arms. As a coach, it's really great to be able to do that. As an athlete, those are really great things to hear. I guess I always wondered when I was coaching cross country is, I feel like I would do so much thinking about what am I going to tell each individual athlete, because as they run by, you only see them for a second, right? So you can't really have a conversation with them and talk through a game plan.
Right.
And you're also not allowed to run alongside next to them, because under the rule books, that's considered pacing. You can get your runner disqualified that way. So, it's one of those things where I spend all this time thinking about, what am I going to tell this particular runner as they run by? Because
in the 2 seconds they run by you. It's a lot of pressure,
It's a lot of pressure. Less is more. And yeah, I find myself defaulting to, bring it back to your focus on your breath, slow your breathing.
And each individual athlete might have particular things that they really need to remember, right? That some runners might start to, kind of curl up their upper body and start to get really tight. And just a reminder to kind of relax your shoulders, shake it out a little bit, I think can go a long way toward bringing runners back to the key principles that are going to sound familiar to them when they're reminded of it, but can be easy to forget when you're tired and you're in the middle of a tough race.
Yeah, and I think one of the things as a coach is, if you're a good coach and you're really getting to know your athletes, you start to learn exactly how to get the best out of your athlete and what sort of cues and what sort of things to say to each athlete, and what are they going to respond to. Some athletes, they want to hear, they want you to tell them someone for them to go catch, right? To create some sort of competition for them to go chase down.
Right.
Other people just need a little bit of encouragement. Maybe you've been working with an athlete on something like you just said, right? Like not getting your shoulders up by your ears, and keeping those arms relaxed so that you're not using energy. And all of these things is, it's funny. People go, oh, coaching cross country, I mean, what? You just tell them to go run. That's pretty simple. And you tell them when to run fast, and you tell them when to run slow. And then when race day comes, you just tell them to run fast the whole time. But It's a little more complex than that.
Sure.
And I think some good coaching, both in terms of like creating training plans, and
Right.
executing practice each day, but also on race day, really understanding, in some ways, the psychology of your athletes.
For sure.
Can really go a long way to helping them reach their best performances.
I always felt like that as an athlete, that the best coaches had a strong sense of what individual athletes need, right? That some people kind of need a particular type of like preparation that really psychs you up. Maybe it's a lot of cheering and yelling and things like this, and some people respond differently to that. So I think that's cool from a coaching perspective also to see what athletes respond to, what really gets them either focused or fired up or whatever it is that they need, is really cool to see. And absolutely taps into, sports psychology and how they can just make their minds help them as best they can, as opposed to kind of getting in the way or holding them back.
Totally, and we've been talking about it this podcast, or I keep calling it a podcast, broadcast.
You know what? It is a podcast. I think we'll just
feels like it. Yeah. New episode.
We're gonna
dropping.
do this every week now, right?
I think so. We're gonna have to just find, the cross country season here in the Northeast is, and I think everywhere around the country is starting to come to an end. But maybe we'll have to keep seeking out some races and offering our unsolicited commentary. But yes, like I was saying, we've been talking about this on the broadcast in the sense that, clearly running is a physical endeavor, but I think racing in particular is really a mental game.
So mental, for sure.
And coaches play a huge role in that.
What about you? Would you prefer a cross-country course like this one where you're running by your coaches so many different times, or would you prefer to run into the woods and not see them again until it's over?
I think wow, it's a really good question. I'm thinking.
Maybe it depends on your coach.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on the
if
coach.
they're going to yell at you or not.
No, I think I preferred. It's interesting. I think I did prefer. At most cross country courses, on ours you're going to see the runners come by a couple, at least 4 times. Start, finish, and then just up the first mile and approaching the second mile. I think as an athlete, I really appreciated having coaches and having people either telling me, what to do, or giving me reminders, or giving me some race intel, like, hey, so-and-so's just around the corner, or hey, this is the time to start moving. Always found that super duper helpful.
We're looking at the finish to the course now. Lest, if anyone is joining us and you want an update of where we are, we finished 3 of the 4 races today. We have the girls' JV race coming up next. And it'll be starting in 10 or 15 minutes or so. So we have a little bit of time before the last race of the day kicks off. That'll be the girls' JV race.
Yeah, daylight savings is in effect. We can see that, the light is starting to fade. Wind's still blowing out here at on the Hotchkiss cross country course. We can see it coming off the lake. Maybe, on the screen you can see some of those little white caps forming. And yeah, despite the windy conditions, the times have been quick today.
They have 2 varsity races, 2 course records set. Yeah, for sure a fast day for running. The wind didn't hold them back at all. Yeah. We're starting to see some of the girls here get ready, lining up along the start line in teams. We've seen this a couple times already today, but we'll see them getting ready, warming up, team huddles, last-minute speeches, all of those things in these final 10 minutes or so before the last race of the day kicks off.
Yeah, this is about that time where, you and your teammates, you're going to get down to the line, you're going to put your spikes on, maybe do some last-minute dynamic stretches and things like that with your sneakers on. But, I remember for me, as soon as you get down to the start line, it's game time. The tone starts to change, and like I was saying earlier in the broadcast, it's that moment where time starts to slow down and you start to realize that we're here,
right.
We're in it,
it's
we're
happening.
At the start line. It's happening.
And especially, these runners have been working all fall, maybe with this race in mind, right? And so it can be a real moment of anticipation building to, it can be hard to believe then when you're finally on the line and it's actually happening. But we see them getting ready now. Like you were saying before, just in terms of the psychology and mental preparation for a race, I think the team camaraderie is a big part of that. So you see them in group huddles, maybe coaches or captains giving final reminders, words of inspiration to get them ready for most of them the last race of their season and the last race of our day here.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you show up to a cross-country meet, and you might arrive as a team, and get yourself situated. There's a shot earlier about where we saw the tents that all the teams have kind of used to kind of hang out in between races. But once the races really start getting underway, and once runners start getting into their warm-up routines, you're kind of there just with your teammates, kind of in this little silo, right? So if you've got, good team camaraderie, if you've got, forged great bonds between your teammates, it can really make a huge difference,
Sure.
And if your teammates really know that, hey, I get really nervous, I need someone to crack a few jokes during the warm-up, or, hey, I really like, we really like to be focused here, so let's treat this as such.
Sure. I think it speaks also to the energy that you were talking about before, that it can be maybe intense with a lot of people, a lot of noise, a lot of excitement, and that this is maybe a moment to kind of tune some of that out and kind of refocus your attention on what you're here to do, and the team can help you do that.
Yeah, and I think too, this is one of the moments where the role of a team captain is really, really important, right? They are often the ones who are going to be tasked with getting everyone together, make sure people are warming up and getting to the start line on time. They're the
setting
ones
the tone also, right?
Setting the tone. They're the ones who's going to be making the speech in that huddle. So yeah, this is where that role of team captain really starts to shine. And
are you good at the inspirational speech before a race and track as a coach, or?
I think as a coach, I found that like my role is often to not be too rah-rah and actually to get athletes to sort of calm down and focus.
Okay.
I remember though when I was running cross country in high school, I was a captain my senior year, and I always really liked giving that little speech in the huddle. And what's interesting is it seemed like they would get increasingly more intense
throughout the season.
Throughout the season, like early, in the early dual meets or invitationals, the tone of the speech would be, hey guys, it's early in the season, running good so far. Let's go out there and have fun.
Sure.
And, by the end of the year at States and at New
Life
England.
or death.
Yeah, it'd be like, it's like we're out here to win. We gotta run as a wolf pack. Like all those other boys in their jerseys, that's the enemy. We gotta go out there and be killers. And
you were talking a big game about how supportive runners are earlier. But
yeah, and of course, that you get done with the race,
sure,
and all of a sudden you're
right,
talking to your friends who are on other teams.
Right.
And it's lively, but yeah, I don't know. It's funny to reflect on some of the tactics of
right,
really trying to make enemies in our minds out of the other runners, when at the end of the day we're all here to do the same thing. And I think any runner, as soon as they cross the line, no matter what they were using to psych themselves up and psych their teammates up before the race starts, you cross that line and there's just this deep appreciation for what everyone has just done, which is just run their hearts out and give it their all. Totally. Michelle, as a former cross country coach here at the Hotchkiss School, as a current swim coach, we were talking a little bit earlier about the importance of team camaraderie, because at the end of the day, when the gun goes off, or even in the pre-meet stuff, having good relationships and good bonds between teammates is so important. What are some of the things that you or that some of your teams have done in the past to kind of build that team camaraderie?
It's a good point, because I think that most often when you think about a moment at the end of the season, the banquet or the party or whatever it is, the thing that people are often talking about is some form of bonding,
Yeah.
And I think one of the benefits of maybe being at a boarding school is that a lot of those moments are shared even outside of the, the pool or the cross-country course or whatever it might be, that there are team dinners and people hanging out in the dorms and things like that. I often find that a lot of athletes on teams that I've been on are remembering hard practices, actually,
Yeah.
and that's where a lot of the bonding happens. It's kind of to your point earlier about everyone crossing the finish line and knowing that they have just been through this thing together, even if they weren't running side by side the whole way, that they've all done this thing. And I think that does a lot, actually, to bring people together, which is really cool to see.
Yeah, 100%.
Big crowd at the start line right now as they're getting ready.
Yeah, big crowd at the start line again. We've got tons of parents, fans, and also, what's interesting is during the varsity races, the timing of it is such that the JV runners needed to be warming up while that race was going on. So
Right.
they might not have been in a position to really cheer on their fellow athletes.
Right.
Now in this last race, the girls' JV race, everyone's done. Everyone's done their cool down. Everyone's ran their race. So it's great to see. The last race of the day is probably going to have the biggest crowds and the most supporters.
We actually saw on the drone coverage of some of the earlier races, you could see people warming up kind of just off the course.
Yes.
As the other races were happening. So that's exactly what you're talking about. People kind of trying to balance. On the one hand, you want to cheer for your teammates, but also their first job is to get themselves ready for their own race, depending on what the timing of their race is.
Yep, totally. All right, yeah, lots of, you can see here, just to that point, we've got runners in their uniforms on the line, and then, lots of friends and teammates who are maybe in the varsity race bundled up in blankets, right behind them, giving them those last kind of final words of encouragement before they, again, toe the line and wait for the gun.
It's an important role of the teammate who's in charge of gathering all of the warm clothes that
Yes.
the runners shed right before the start, which looks like it's we're getting close to.
It looks like we are getting close to indeed. Again, yes, the girls' JV race set to go off at 3:25.
We'll see if we have any dogs at the start this time around.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Hopefully the dogs have been leashed.
Yeah, please use your leashes. That was, yes, an interesting development in our last race. For those just tuning in, right at the start of the boys' JV race, a dog got on the loose. Must have just pulled loose of its owner and kind of followed the runners for, I have to say, that probably the first quarter mile of the race or so.
The runners were so in the zone, they weren't even, they seemed unfazed by it.
Totally, yeah. Unfazed by it, and yeah, if anything, kind of appreciating the kind of pacing job
Sure.
that the dog was doing, or
Sure.
or maybe if you're a runner who is, and there we go, we're off. There's the girls' race.
Yeah, we're starting early.
Starting early, but hey, if everyone's on the line, everyone's
Sure,
ready to
everyone's
go.
ready.
It's kind of it's getting chilly. It's windy. Why keep them on the line?
So we've seen this narrowing of the big pack in the previous few races, also as the line kind of curves around to the left around the observatory, which we're about to see. You mentioned before, runners kind of want to get along that left-hand side without getting too jammed up or tripping or anything like that. So we see some runners taking it out pretty fast to try to just get to the front of that pack so they don't get caught up.
Yeah. Looks like the identity of the Pelican has been revealed. Kind of maybe looks like they're maybe confirming where the runners are going to be so they can cheer them on. But yeah, you can see, the crowds are starting to move and they're starting to make their way to that next point of the race where they'll be able to see the runners crossing the 1 mile mark. We're about a minute in now. Be curious to see when we switch to the drone footage how this race is developing, whether we're seeing some strong front runners or whether the pack is more or less staying together. Again, one of the great things about the JV race is you really get a sense of the depth of these teams. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, so they're just coming up the 7th fairway now. Again, for those tuning in, JV race, great opportunity to see the depth of these teams and to get a glimpse into their future, right? A lot of these JV squads are going to be comprised of, freshmen and sophomores who, perhaps by the time they're juniors and seniors will be on the varsity team. And here they go. This is sort of a part of the course that trends uphill. They'll be coming back this way at the end of the race as they retrace their steps.
I have to give a shout out to Tinker right now because they're running by Tinker, and you spent some time telling us about Dana's architecture, and I live in Tinker, so I just want to give them a wave. I can sometimes watch the course from Tinker.
Yeah, Tinker, this is Coy right now that we see, but Tinker we just passed. Tinker, largest dorm on the Hotchkiss campus.
Indeed.
The mighty, mighty Tinker.
The leaders are about to cross through the main entrance to Hotchkiss. Security often there to make sure we stop traffic if there's any traffic coming through.
Yep, and yeah, we see some people there, and again, they'll be coming the other way at the end of the race,
Right, the whole first mile really repeated again at the end of the race in reverse.
So interesting, getting this drone view, getting to see all these trees on our campus from up here, and look kind of interesting without their leaves. All right, so again, very much like the boys JV race, we've got some front runners here pushing the pace at the start. Again, maybe it's the case where we've got some athletes who, on any other team would have been on the varsity squad and in that varsity race, but just happened to be in on a really talented team with a lot of depth, and so they're going to get their chance here to feel what it's like to run at the front.
You can't quite see from this angle, but they are really starting to run downhill here. So there are a couple of downhills in the first half of the course. This is the first of two. So interesting to see how some runners take this. Some, as you mentioned, really skilled at running downhill, ready to kind of just open it up on this downhill before they move through the second half where they'll climb up a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think a course like this that has a very downhill, fast first mile can present a puzzle for a lot of runners. A lot of coaches will caution their runners, don't go out too fast, don't go out too fast. At the same time, on a course like this, you want to take advantage of those downhills, especially if you're trying to run a fast time or get some sort of PR. So, you kind of go back and forth, and I think today what we've seen in the other races has proved that if you take this first mile fast, you're going to have a good rest of the race. Sorry, it's cold out here. It's getting hard to articulate those R's and W's.
Yeah, and I think we've seen, we've talked a bit already about the training that these runners have gone through all season to be able to close out the second half of this course too, right? That's an important contingency for how well they do if they've gone out really fast in the first half, that they have to have the legs to climb in the second half and the aerobic capacity, which we certainly saw runners do quite well in the first few races of the day.
Yeah, and like you mentioned before, sometimes what an athlete thinks, would otherwise be too fast is actually not too fast on the day, because they're realizing, hey, I've actually made a lot of improvements over the course of the season, or this sort of taper that we've done the past couple of weeks where we've lightened up our training load has made, a certain pace that used to feel hard and used to feel out of control now feels very in control. And I think when we talk about how does a runner in a 3-mile race approach the first mile, I think the goal is don't leave any time on the table. Take it out fast, but you got to keep it in control.
Sure.
Right? As soon as you start to lose control and you've started running at a pace where you can't maintain good form or feel like you're staying relaxed, I think that's when you've gone out too fast. Otherwise, get the seconds where you can get them.
So we're switching to a view here of the runners approaching the mile marker. You can see the clock off to the right of the screen. They'll get their mile splits there. And then they'll come through, essentially passing by the start and the finish for the first of a couple of times on this course that loops through. But a big pack working together here at the front.
Yeah, big pack of Exeter runners again.
That team running you were talking about earlier.
That team running, that pack running, working together, pushing each other. And again, we can see 4 Exeter runners right there at the front of the race. And again, bodes really well for the future of Exeter cross country. We've also see, Andover, Loomis. I think we're starting to see something here where those same teams that were in contention for the team title in the varsity race, we're also seeing them in contention for the team title in the JV race. A testament to the fact that if you want to sustain strong cross-country teams from year to year, you've got to have strong JV programs. You can't just put all your attention in those varsity runners.
Sure, yeah, building the depth, not just depth through 7 runners in a varsity race, but depth through the JV level as well. And like you said before, too, depth through JV means a lot of runners who are strong and competitive in JV. It's just like in the varsity race, not only the first couple of runners who count, and this pack of runners at the start is a good example of that.
Yeah, and cross country, it's usually not a contact sport, but injuries happen, and it can be really important for a team to be able to draw from those JV ranks to be able to fill in spots that open up as a result of injury or other unforeseen events.
Sure. You're seeing the big pack of runners come through what is a relatively flat part of the course here. It is rolling. Most of this course is at the very least rolling, but especially relative to the hill that they just descended and that they will climb back up at the end of the race. They're moving through a relatively flat or rolling part of the course in the center of the course here, running really right by the start and finish once again.
Yeah, and again, you're seeing some great examples of team running, pack running, where these sort of clusters of similar uniforms, we can see some athletes working together here in the race. Presumably they've been the ones who have been training together all season. They know each other, they have faith in each other. And again, in a big race like this, where the crowds are loud and things are intense, it can be really comforting.
So here's the front of the race here, some runners who are getting ready to go down one of the hills. This is some uneven ground on this hill too, I think a little bit. They'll be paying attention to footing here also, even as they're trying to kind of be aggressive. And as you mentioned on the first downhill, taking advantage. There's enough climbing that they're going to be doing. They want to take advantage of the downhills here.
Yeah, as we mentioned before, a big part or much of this cross-country course is ran on the Hotchkiss golf course. And when you're running in that short grass on the fairway, it's fast, it's firm, the footing is usually very predictable and firm, but there are some sections where you start to run in the rough where things can be a little lumpier, the grass is certainly longer, maybe you sort of step on a little divot and throws you out of your rhythm. So again, I think cross-country, very different from track and field in the sense that, it's about rolling with the punches, and, sometimes even the ground beneath your feet is not cooperative.
Right.
And you've got to just be able to not let that phase you.
2 runners in the front here, pretty tight, pushing each other, getting ready to turn onto Lake Road here, which we mentioned before. This is one of the stretches on pavement, one of the few stretches on pavement on the course. And it is still downhill, actually. This downhill continues before they'll turn right to climb up Cardiac Hill, the steepest hill on the course.
Yeah, and in some ways this is panning out a lot like the other 3 races we've watched today, where we've got a select group of runners, in this case a pair and one trailing in the very, very front. And again, it'll be curious to see whether or not things change as we get into the second half of the course that, for the most part, trends uphill for the next mile and a half or so, really.
And the hills have really separated people out in a lot of instances, whether it's the front pack from a group behind, or even we've seen in earlier races today, the hills separating the front pack. Maybe it's a couple of people who were running together that start to pull apart, and we might see that here as well.
Yeah, I think in both races, really, like if you think about the varsity races, both on the boys and the girls side, I'd say that this hill was kind of the definitive moment in the race where Tam was able to increase his lead on Alex Fisher in the boys' race, and where Charlotte Murphy was able to really stretch that lead over Lily Lyons in the girls' race.
Sure. So they've got this climb up ahead of him. That's a good angle, that one in particular, to see the grade of the hill. It's pretty steep. But these lead runners are really kind of plugging away at it.
Yeah,
they make it look easy, don't they?
They make it look easy, but I can tell you that it is not. Oftentimes our cross-country runners here at Hotchkiss will do workouts on this hill, and oftentimes, too, we'll take the track team here in the spring, and then we'll do kind of hill sprints, and, they never like to hear that we're heading to cardiac, but I think they do realize that it's for the best. It's like yeah, it's good. It's like eating your broccoli, right? It's maybe you don't like it at first, but you know it's good for you.
I mean, these two runners continuing to work together on this stretch of hill that continues, that lingers beyond what was just the crest of the steep hill, but they're continuing to climb. They're still going up as they run by the lake here.
Yeah, I've got two runners in the lead, and it looks like behind them a pretty close pack of runners as well.
Yeah, and a good number, pretty close behind.
And a good number of them as well. Like, it'll be interesting to see whether or not, for any cycling fans out there, the peloton ends up making their way to the breakaway, or whether or not these two runners are going to be away. This shot, I think, making it clear that, those two runners in front do have a pretty sizable lead over the rest of the pack, but it'll be interesting to see, will these uphill sections coming up widen or shorten that gap? And what will happen with these two runners?
This is the Tour de France of cross-country running, Sam.
Yeah, well, for New England prep schools, yes, this is the Tour de France.
Lead runners about to approach the 2-mile marker now, and a flatter stretch of the course too, which is a welcome relief, I think, between these two hills that they're about to climb.
Yeah, and these two runners, I mean, they both look very relaxed.
They do.
They're working hard, but there's no signs that either of them are really fading or considerably slowing down at all. I think, here's an interesting question, Michelle. We've got two runners here. They're about to get into a part of the course that is a sort of a long, unrelenting uphill section. Again, we kind of talked about this a little bit with the boys' race, but if you were in this race and you were in this position, would you want to be the runner in front or would you want to be behind? Would you want to be holding off or would you want to be chasing?
I think I would want to use the hill that's about to come up. And those two runners in the front are so kind of neck and neck with each other that I think if I were either one of them, I'm not sure I would care too much about being just in front or just in back, but I would care about using that final hill. As you mentioned, I think on the first race, that it's a real opportunity actually, and I think the best way to train cross country and to train on hills is to see them as an opportunity to really kind of open something up or to start to become really aggressive. Like if you feel that you have anything left, like here's the time to start to press on an opponent that you're running against and to try to put some pressure on them.
Yeah, I mean, hills, they really string the field out. What we might see is either runners intentionally pushing the pace on the hills, knowing that if there's a runner trying to follow, they might not be able to keep up. What we might also see is a situation where both the runners just try to hold pace, and that's just kind of this game of, who can hold on to it for the longest.
Sure. You mentioned earlier how it's such a mental game, right? That racing is so mental, and that certainly racing at the end of the year is so mental, and I think certainly on a hill that's true as well. And we do appear to have a little bit of opening here.
Yeah, as we get closer, we'll be able to see who exactly is in front. But yeah, and what's exciting is I think this pack behind here, we've got, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or so runners that are able to keep those top two runners in their sights, but are pretty closely clumped, in respect to each other. And who knows? Who knows what can happen?
We saw in the boys JV race too, some people in that front pack catch others too. So really kind of using the hill in the last half mile or so to close that gap, we might be able to see again.
Yeah, and we talked earlier in the broadcast for this race about, going out in that first mile, going out fast, going out too slow. I think if you're in a situation where you've gone out too fast on this course, down that hill in the first mile, when you come back to this hill in the second mile of the race, that's when you're going to know that you took it out too fast.
Sure. You're having flashbacks to when you were on the hill the last time.
You're not going to know it in the first mile when you're running downhill, but you're going to know it in the last mile when you feel yourself starting to fade. But Yeah, gaps are forming here.
Sam, you were mentioning earlier the kind of mile markers or meter markers as you're climbing up this hill. You've run Torrey's Hill a bunch of times as
Yes.
a coach with the cross country team and maybe on your own too. And we would kind of break this hill up into chunks, right? And
Right.
practice some fast finishes as we're moving, cresting through the top of this hill and trying to transition to the speed of the flatter sections of the hill that will follow.
Yeah, I'd say this section uphill of Torrey's is about 600 meters long, and as runners approach here and start to get onto this, you can see it in the shot now in the bottom left, this kind of gravel path that goes past the beach volleyball courts. As they start to make this turn, right, there's a flag, and that is about 800 meters to go. Or
From the finish, yes.
From the finish,
Right,
about a
right.
half mile to go.
Right.
Um,
It's an important marker, I think,
Yes.
right? To runners know what that last half mile feels like, and they know when to start to shift gears, if it's time to sprint, when it's time to start to kick, and things like that.
Yeah, I think this this is a really nice finish on a course in the sense that you've just finished this big hill, and so if you've been able to create a lead on other runners, the terrain of these last 800 meters is really conducive. If you're feeling good and you haven't pushed yourself too early and drained yourself too early, right? The sort of rolling downhill terrain of this last 800 meters paired with the fact that there's some opportunities to take some turns and get out of sight of people who might be chasing you.
Right.
It's really conducive to holding on to that lead. At the same time, if you've really pushed it on that hill in a way that has left you, maybe too tired to run your best in these last 800 meters, that same rolling, fast, net downhill terrain is really conducive to runners who were chasing going up
Sure.
Torrey's Hill, making that time up and putting themselves in a chance to kick for the finish,
Right.
like what we saw in the boys' JV race.
Right. It's important that runners not think about the last hill as the last challenge that they have. The top of Torrey's is not the end of the race. And while it feels nice to level out a little bit after that, there's still, as you mentioned, a half a mile to go. That could feel long if you've gone too hard on that hill.
Yeah, but having run this course before, this part of the course that our lead runner is on right now, it's a fast part. It's the kind of downhill that is steep enough to where you really feel like you can go fast, but it doesn't take very much effort. So this is a good
Sure.
opportunity to kind of slow down your heart rate, get your breath back under you, clear that lactic acid out of your legs. But it's not so downhill that it feels awkward and uncomfortable to run. So you can
Right.
really get a nice boost as you make this right-hand turn and head for the observatory and towards the finish.
It's a good setup for that fast finish as she rounds the observatory here.
Yeah, and just like we were talking about, the gaps have continued to open up here. First place I think is going to go unchallenged here, but I think what will be interesting is how are things going to shake out in that pack that's going to be vying for those third, fourth, fifth, sixth place spots.
Sure, it's looked like a pretty big pack, just a few places behind the lead runner. So that is likely to be a close and interesting finish. And here we have a good shot of lead runner in her final stretch here.
Yeah, it looks like a runner from Andover, right? So if you remember that shot when we had, we're looking at the runners coming through the first mile, it was Exeter all the way, just a sea of red and a sea of E's coming through that first mile. But Andover here, right? Again, on that school rivalry day.
Sure.
Besting out the Exeter runners. Running 21, it looks like 21:50 just about.
2050, yep.
Yeah, or not 21, sorry, 20:50. And
Pretty controlled finish, too.
pretty controlled finish, too.
Yeah, she looked like she made a move at the right time. We kind of moved away from the lead pack, and when we came back to her, she had opened it up quite a bit.
There we go. There's the Exeter runner in second. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see as more runners start to come through the line.
Oh, and here
What teams are they on?
We can see some greater volume, I think, starting to round the bend around the observatory from our view.
Oh, right.
Here on Elfer's patio, so I think we'll start to see some of those numbers come through. And
Right,
here they
okay,
are.
so Loomis and then Exeter. Another Andover runner, it seems. Yeah. Here we go. And look at that. You know, a great example of the kind of sportsmanship we're talking about. They'd been running together the whole race, giving each other a hug in the chute. No bad blood. Oh, that's sweet to see.
Hopefully they made each other run faster even on this hard course too.
I think so. I think that's maybe what that little moment was there, kind of
Sure.
acknowledging the ways that they helped each other and just congratulating each other on a good race.
Don't you think too, especially on a hard race, there's something powerful about, you were saying before, just like having gone through the difficult run. Like even if there's some space between you, or you open up space between runners, that you know that there's a degree of shared experience having run that hill together or things like that.
I know.
It goes a long way.
Right. Yeah, you can get in the chute and just turn to the person in front or behind you and go, how about that hill?
Right.
And everyone will know exactly what you're talking about, and they'll feel the same way. Yeah,
There's
lots
that
of
bulk
exit runners.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, totally.
Now we're starting to see some more volume coming through here.
100%. Looks like, yeah, people holding firm, holding each other off. Some good, tight kick finishes here. Here we go, yeah. The looks on some of the faces you can see in the shot. They're laying it all out there on the course, and it shows. Good for them. Here we go, yeah.
Good view of the chute.
Yeah, you can see just how many runners are in this race. And, you know, you might not be able to see it or hear it on our broadcast, but we can hear it there. It's loud there coming down the past,
Sure.
the last stretch. I mean, that has to be a really cool experience for the runners as they come down. You know, you might be thinking to yourself, oh, I'm in the JV race. It's not the varsity race. It's the last race of the day, right? And here they are getting what seems to be the loudest and most
Sure.
animated crowd of the whole event.
Yeah, the energy has stayed high all day, certainly. And they're, I think, grateful to see this is the fourth time now that they've really run through this spot, essentially, and seen this spot, and finally at the finish. So,
Totally.
yeah, I think you can see that on their faces maybe when they're done, too.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see there's these ebbs and flows to the volume of the cheering as people cross through the line, and you know, it looks like there's some tight finishes here with, you know, runners having opportunities to pass maybe one or two people in these last 30 or so meters to the line. And, you know, the crowd always likes to see that. I think the crowds always love to see a really close, you know, kind of sprint
Sure.
foot race
Sure.
at the end there.
Right, and I've seen this even, presumably, like sometimes not even fans from either of the teams, but
Right.
just cheering people on. You kind of want everybody to give it their best, even if you have nothing invested
Yeah.
in which runner wins or which team wins. That I think that's a really strong prevailing spirit of cross-country meets also, is that everybody wants people to have good, strong, fast finishes.
I know, yeah. You know, it's hard not to see to get invested, even if not, you know, just momentarily when you see two athletes really duking it out.
Sure. So we have the end of the girls' JV race here. The last runners are crossing through, and we are getting ready to wrap up our broadcast/podcast. Sam?
Yeah. So Michelle, any last words as we close things out here?
I'm just excited about getting to watch all of these races. We've talked a lot about the energy and the spirit of cross country today, and I'm feeling it. So I'm excited, and congrats to all the runners.
Yeah, I just want to give a huge shout out to everyone who made today's broadcast possible and everyone who made today's meet possible, with a special shout out to, again, our two Hotchkiss head cross-country coaches, Kira Shake and Pierre Yu. They've done phenomenal work in making sure that this event goes out without a hitch, and in preparing Michelle and I with all sorts of data and statistics to talk about with you all ahead of the race. It's been an exciting day. The times have been fast. Some course records have fallen. We hope you've enjoyed our broadcast here from sunny and windy Hotchkiss School.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Michelle. Signing off.